Every single one of his fingers possessed a unique god-tier ability. His divine index finger, capable of obliterating absolutely anything in its path. His divine middle finger delivered ultimate judgment. His divine ring finger radiated pure, miraculous healing. His title, the one true God. So how did he secure this ridiculously overpowered strength? By literally squashing bugs on a mobile game. It all kicked off on a perfectly normal day, when a seriously sketchy app randomly spawned on his phone screen. The second his thumb tapped the glowing treasure chest icon, it burst open with an epic flash. A system notification locked onto the screen. Welcome to the evil god creator. A digital ant casually crawled across the display, trailing a string of totally unreadable alien text. Instead of questioning his sanity like any normal dude, he just aggressively tap-spammed the screen to see what would happen. To his absolute shock, the tiny bug got instantly pulverized beneath his fingertip. A golden coin literally popped out of his screen, and the system coldly announced, "Target number 1 eliminated. You have acquired 1 divine coin. Congratulations. You are now 1 step closer to becoming the supreme evil god of absolute destruction." He just stared at the device in pure disbelief, wondering if he had just miraculously awakened as a hunter. Now, if this kind of crazy stuff happened 20 years ago, he would have checked himself straight into a mental ward without a second thought. But lucky for his sanity, the rules of reality had completely shifted. 2 decades prior, massive spatial rifts ripped across the globe, vomiting out an endless swarm of interdimensional nightmares. Humanity was pushed to the absolute brink of extinction, but the tides turned when certain humans triggered supernatural awakenings. The mana harvested from slaughtering these beasts became humanity's ultimate lifeline for survival. These awakened warriors were ranked from the god-tier double S class all the way down to the utter trash tier of rank G. Once the system assigned, your rank leveling up was basically impossible. Desperate to confirm his new reality, he practically sprinted to the Hunter Evaluation Center. The staff member hit him with a polite corporate smile and announced, "Congratulations, Mr. One, True God. You have officially awakened a skill constitution." His heart practically exploded from his chest. Epic fantasies hijacked his brain. He pictured himself as a legendary ranker, completely surrounded by adoring fanboys, and gorgeous people who would definitely ignore his awkward personality just for a taste of his clout. He desperately prayed to the heavens, "Just give me rank D. Hell, even rank F would be a total win. Literally anything but the absolute bottom." The machine let out a sharp beep. The clerk glanced at the monitor and delivered the brutal verdict. "You are rank G." The words slammed into him like a 10-ton truck. Rank G, the absolute rock bottom of the food chain. His combat power was literally no better than an average civilian. The clerk confirmed his uselessness with cold professionalism, asking if he still wanted to drop 28,001 just to register. He hesitated for a split second, but realized that without dungeon access paying, that ridiculous fee was basically setting his own wallet on fire. So he gave a hard pass and walked out. That night, he crashed at his apartment, completely exhausted and emotionally wrecked. Just as his eyes fluttered shut, his smartphone violently vibrated on the nightstand, jolting him wide awake. Furious and glaring at the screen, he snatched it up and started ruthlessly crushing digital ants, unleashing his inner rage like a lunatic god. Before he even realized it, physical divine coins were literally spilling all over his floor like loose change from a chaotic jackpot. When morning finally broke, the scattered loot had magically fused into a glowing stack. The system counter rocketed from 1 all the way to 100. The system chimed again. "Congratulations, nameless god. You have officially met the conditions to unlock the divine shop. Do you wish to proceed?" Without a single ounce of hesitation, he smashed the yes button. The access fee demanded exactly 100 coins, and he blew his entire stash in a heartbeat. The physical coins resting on his mattress vanished into thin air, proving this insane system was 100% real. But as the mystical storefront materialized, every single item was glitching in some bizarre alien script he could not even begin to decode. To make matters way worse, the price tags demanded a mind-numbing 1 billion coins each. He had literally spent the entire night mashing his screen like a madman, and only managed to farm a pathetic 300 coins. These galactic prices felt like a massive slap to the face. Suddenly, the shop window glitched and refreshed. The top-tier item mysteriously dropped to a bargain price of just 100 coins. Shrugging off the weirdness, he casually tapped purchase. A glowing notification popped up. "You have acquired the exclusive skill, Eye of the Blind God." He stared at the screen, totally dumbfounded. Blind God. What kind of trash-tier ability was that? How on earth was a blind eye supposed to help him? Karma answered him instantly. His entire world violently plunged into pitch-black darkness. His vision was completely wiped out. Absolute panic gripped his chest as he desperately fumbled around for his phone, only to ruthlessly slam his pinky toe into the corner of his desk. The agonizing pain made him screech like the universe was personally bullying him. But then, just as suddenly as the nightmare started, his sight snapped back. Shaking with adrenaline, he grabbed his device, only to realize the unreadable alien text was now perfectly clear in his mind. The shop was loaded with an endless arsenal of god-tier items. After scrolling through the insane loot, his eyes locked onto a universal growth skill, the Divine Index, finger that obliterates everything. He tapped the screen, locking in the purchase. Staring at his own finger in total disbelief, he wondered what the heck this so-called divine finger actually did. Right on cue, the AC behind him blasted to life. Pointing straight at it, he commanded, "All-crushing divine index finger." The machine instantly powered down. He aimed at his PC, and it booted up. Ultimately, the crushing truth hit him like a truck. His legendary god-tier skill was basically just a glorified universal remote. Realizing his supreme power was a total flop, he fell back on the one grind that actually brought him some peace: squashing ants. The black grunts popped under his finger, like literal bubble wrap, showering him in a sweet, endless loop of divine coins. But then a crimson ant spawned on the screen. The aura was totally different. Tap A, clean miss. Tap again. Another brutal whiff. No matter how fiercely he spammed his attacks, this crimson menace dodged every single strike. With infuriating perfection, it glided around like it could read the future, flexing godlike reflexes and a massive ego. Realizing he had just triggered a boss encounter, he started sweating, mashing the screen like a totally unhinged gamer. His finger cramped up, his sanity snapped, and that smug little pest actually managed to escape. Boiling with absolute rage, he unleashed his fury by absolutely massacring the low-level black ants. Right then, the system coldly flashed a prompt. Calculating his kill count had just crossed 800. He was merely 200 strikes away from unlocking the title of Evil God, but his mana and stamina were completely drained. He crash-landed onto his bed, instantly blacking out. Deep in his slumber, the system secretly triggered the Eye of the Blind, God awakening an exclusive hidden trait. That night, his consciousness was pulled into what felt like an astral movie theater. Projected on the massive screen, the Crimson Ant returned, now limping heavily with a makeshift cane, looking like a battered war veteran surviving a catastrophe. Dragging itself to a cavern entrance, it shrieked to the colony inside, claiming it had successfully tracked down their stolen food source. But in the process, it suffered a devastating ambush from a terrifying god of the Dark Tribe. It warned them that barely escaping alive took everything it had, and now they had to strike first. The cave instantly erupted in chaotic laughter. The colony mocked the survivor without a shred of mercy, branding it a pathetic coward. They scoffed that some random dark god was nothing but a joke spitting, that it should have just died on the battlefield, instead of crawling back, crying. Suddenly, an oppressive aura filled the cavern. An elder ant stepped from the shadows, silencing the mob, stroking its antennas. Like a stereotypical anime grandmaster, the elder declared, it could actually sense the dark god's presence. These sacred grounds belonged to their great emperor, and letting some filthy evil god exist in their territory was an absolute taboo. They would execute the intruder at dawn. The ancient insect placed a glowing hand upon the crippled crimson ant. A massive surge of healing energy erupted instantly, mending its shattered exoskeleton. The elder commanded the survivor to lead the vanguard proudly, announcing he would personally crush this so-called evil spirit. The entire ant army roared in absolute sync, chanting for the total annihilation of the evil god, and right at the climax of their war cry, his eyes snapped open. He wiped his sweat, brushing it off as some wildly unhinged fever dream. Honestly, a buggy nightmare was the only logical explanation. But then, his phone chimed. The crimson ant was back on his screen, his gamer fighting spirit instantly reignited, and he geared up to squash this boss monster for good. But things went from 0 to 100 in seconds. A whole squad of elite crimson ants swarmed his display. The center commander screeched nature's divine judgment upon the great evil. Boom! A razor-sharp beam of blue light blasted right out of his screen, slashing across his forehead and drawing actual real-life blood. Beyond the digital veil, the ant army channeled their ultimate spell, chanting sacred hymns to subjugate the evil god and praising their grandmaster. But before his brain could even process what kind of insane glitch, he was dealing with a blinding crimson judgment rained down upon the ant realm. It wiped out countless soldiers in a split second. Back in reality, he lost his mind, frantically hammering the screen, like it owed him rent. He unleashed such a brutal combo that the device literally started smoking. Only after he almost turned his precious phone into scrap metal did his senses finally return. The glass was completely shattered. His entire room was flooded with physical divine coins, and through the cracks the system calmly flashed a new alert. 1,000 strikes achieved. Congratulations. You have unlocked the evil god title, the Cruel Butcher. He stared at the glowing text, completely speechless. Cruel Butcher. He was literally a law-abiding citizen. He paid his taxes and minded his own damn business. That villainous title didn't match his vibe at all. Suddenly, the mountain of gold coins began to melt and fuse together, forging themselves into a mystical ring. Grabbing the loot, he inspected it closely. The artifact radiated a soothing, magical fragrance. The second it hit his nose, it instantly cleansed his mind and sharpened his focus. Driven by gamer curiosity, he slid the band onto his pinky finger. The absolute second the metal touched his skin, a massive surge of pure mana hijacked his nervous system. Every ounce of fatigue was vaporized. He felt like he had literally been reborn. The phone chimed one last time, automatically triggering the Eye of the Blind God. To analyze his new gear, Druid's Ring, forged with the raw life force of the ancient forest, grants a massive buff to accelerated growth skills. Armed with an overpowered artifact like this, and an appraisal skill that could see right through the fabric of reality, he seriously started doubting his current hunter rank. There was absolutely zero chance a guy rocking this kind of legendary gear was still stuck at rock bottom rank G. Fueled by pure, unfiltered delusion, he marched straight back into the Hunter Association testing center. But the second he stepped up to the counter, the staff member shot him a deadpan glare. They hit him with the cold, hard truth. The awakening test had an error rate of literally less than 1%. And a retest. That would cost him a staggering $1,580,000. Hearing that astronomical number, his soul basically left his body. Reality smacked him right in the face. He instantly bowed in apology, muttering that he would come back some other time. Yeah, that overpowered ring had definitely inflated his ego way too much. Slumping onto a nearby lobby sofa, his blind god's eye suddenly flared to life all on its own. The system started aggressively scanning every single person in the room without their permission. Status windows popped up everywhere. A 30-year-old dude suffering from hemorrhoids, a 41-year-old guy dealing with kidney failure. But then his gaze locked onto a stunning girl standing in the distance. Unlike the random NPCs, her status window actually displayed a name alongside a super bizarre condition: tingling. Driven by absolute sheer curiosity and acting like a total clown, he casually strolled right up to her. Closing the distance, he literally reached out his hand and, with zero social awareness, awkwardly asked if her body was tingling all over. The girl's eyes turned instantly murderous. She glared at him, clearly debating whether to end his bloodline right then and there. Crackling blue lightning began sparking furiously around her fingertips. The air grew heavy with static. She was literally half a second away from completely deep-frying him into a pile of ash. But right before his inevitable doom, his cell phone suddenly blared to life. Snatching it out of his pocket, he bolted from the lobby like a wanted fugitive, sprinting away from the scene of his absolute embarrassment. He had barely survived getting nuked into a smoking piece of barbecue by the terrifying lightning girl. The phone buzzed a second time. It was the ultimate boss monster, his older sister. She commanded him to go fetch his little niece from the local park. He immediately complied without a single word of protest, because, let us be real, even newly awakened evil gods know better than to mess with an angry older sister. Reaching the playground, he spotted his tiny niece waiting for him. She looked incredibly adorable, yet radiated an aura of pure, unfiltered chaos. Staring at her chubby little face, he seriously could not wrap his head around it. How on earth did a literal demon like his sister manage to spawn an angel this incredibly cute? Almost on instinct, his hand shot out and aggressively squished her soft cheeks. Big mistake. She instantly erupted like a tiny volcano, stomping her feet and screaming that she hated when he did that. He mentally braced himself. This apocalyptic tantrum was guaranteed to last for at least a solid hour. But right at that critical moment, the blind god's eye forced itself open once again. A glowing system screen materialized perfectly over the screaming toddler's head. Target Kai Shenyan. Current burning desire, a massive chocolate ice cream cone. Acting with military precision, he immediately offered to treat her to some sweet dessert. The deadly tantrum vanished into thin air, replaced instantly by a completely drooling mouth. World-ending crisis totally averted. The dynamic duo marched straight toward the nearest dessert shop. The shopkeeper welcomed them with a bright plastic smile. But as our hero started scraping together a handful of loose change to pay the bill, the cheerful expression on the cashier's face completely flatlined. In absolute deafening silence, the worker began counting the pennies, with the heavy sigh of a man who severely regretted his entire life choices. Judging the poor guy fiercely, the clerk handed over a brutally pathetic, extremely undersized chocolate cone. Our main character glared at the tiny scoop, completely outraged by this blatant disrespect. And that is exactly when his newborn god complex decided to take over. Channeling aura into his divine index finger, he aimed directly at the soft-serve machine. The equipment absolutely glitched out, blasting an endless mountain of chocolate swirl. Spewing non-stop like a possessed magical artifact, his tiny niece immediately wrapped her arms around the towering cone, guarding it fiercely like a mythical dragon, hoarding legendary treasure, refusing to share even a single bite. He let out a deep sigh, completely accepting his tragic fate as the broke uncle. But suddenly, his phone let out a chilling, blood-curdling alarm. Title unlocked, The Cruel Butcher. Thanks to the tidal wave system effect, his combat luck stat shot through the absolute roof. Before he could even process the notification, the concrete beneath their feet began quaking violently. Massive, glowing crimson eyes ripped open in the sky above. It was as if the very fabric of reality had just woken up, choosing extreme violence. A colossal, demonic horned beast tore its way out of a spatial dimensional rift. Wasting zero time, the Titan began unleashing absolute carnage on the city streets. Cars were swatted away like cheap toys, skyscraper walls shattered into dust. Blind panic swallowed the crowd in mere seconds. He snatched his niece off the ground and sprinted for his life, running like a madman trying to escape a disaster zone. But tragedy struck when the little girl tripped over a chunk of debris. As he desperately yanked her back to her feet, a massive shadow instantly swallowed them. The beast was already towering right behind them. Unleashing a deafening roar, the monster lunged. Trapped with zero escape routes, he squeezed his eyes shut, bracing his fragile body for total merciless annihilation. But right then, a blinding flash of raw blue lightning sliced through the chaos. It was the same thunder-wielding girl from the testing center. She materialized out of thin air, smashing the Titan with a devastating high-voltage thunderstrike. Boom! But as the smoke cleared, the monster stood there, completely unfazed, without a single scratch. She unleashed another massive barrage of electricity, still absolute zero damage. She cursed fiercely under her breath, the horrible realization sinking in that she was completely outmatched. An A-rank dungeon break boss was simply on a whole different power scaling. Even as an elite B-rank hunter, her chances of survival were basically zero. Glancing back, she spotted him shielding the crying toddler. Without hesitating, she threw herself into the front line, screaming at them to run for their lives, while she acted as a human shield against the beast. But before the words even fully left her mouth, the abomination launched a lethal counterattack. Her monocore flickered wildly. She could not cast her defensive barrier in time. The Grim Reaper was literally staring her in the face. In that frozen fraction of a second, her mind shattered into pure chaos. Boiling rage, crushing regret, and an absolutely overpowering thirst for bloody vengeance flooded her entire consciousness. But right at that desperate, heart-stopping millisecond, a godly system voice echoed deep within his soul. Command, crush everything, divine index finger activate. An unfathomable, world-shaking power suddenly erupted through his very veins. Like a caged tempest finally breaking free, an overwhelming surge of pure energy unlike anything she had ever experienced coursed through her very veins. She unleashed a devastating electrical storm, violently tearing the battlefield to shreds. When the smoke finally cleared, the monstrous beast was completely crushed. The surviving crowd erupted into deafening cheers, crowning her the Empress of Thunder, but she just stared down at her trembling hands in absolute shock, completely unable to process her own sudden awakening. Still struggling to wrap his head around the sheer chaos our main character approached with his niece offering his deepest gratitude for the life-saving rescue. The newly awakened Empress simply waved it off, just incredibly relieved they survived. Later, that very night, he stood completely alone on an overpass, the traumatic memories replaying on an endless loop. That horrific beast did not just spawn out of thin air. It was hunting him down, hungering for his divine aura. A sudden glow from his smartphone confirmed his darkest suspicions. Trial successfully cleared. Cruel Butcher, rank leveled up. Reward unlocked. Evil God skills can now be acquired without spending a single coin. This apocalyptic nightmare all linked back to one literal thing, this cursed phone. He honestly wanted to chuck the device straight into the roaring ocean. But before he could yeet it, a fresh notification flashed across the screen, glowing with otherworldly runes. Meanwhile, in an entirely different dimension, a relentless ant army was fiercely laying siege to the Shadow Tribe fortress. The Shadow Tribe Saintess was desperately begging the heavens for a miracle. The system prompt mercilessly asked, would he intervene and save this pathetic, trembling creature crying out for salvation? He hesitated for exactly half a second before tapping the glass. Smash! The crimson ant invader was instantly obliterated. The system demanded a name. He casually typed it out, the one true God. Overwhelmed by absolute awe, the Saintess swore eternal loyalty on the spot. A golden title suddenly materialized. Good God title unlocked, benevolent savior. Now holding both the ultimate holy and demonic titles, his moral alignment instantly shifted from evil to perfectly neutral. As a completion reward, a massive bounty of 100,000 divine coins dropped into his inventory. Grinning like a total madman, he practically sprinted into the divine shop interface and immediately purchased a bottle of the Growth God Protection Elixir. After running a quick scan and realizing its horribly suspicious origins, he just shrugged and chugged the whole thing anyway. Then he downed another. At first silence, but then his vision completely blacked out and he hit the floor hard. When his senses finally booted back up, he found himself crashed on his own bed, his entire body buzzing with insanely revitalized energy. Despite completely passing out like a drunken deity, the smartphone lit up the darkness aggressively, pinging with an update. Thanks to a massive spike in his synchronization rate with the evil god creator, multiple core systems had just been massively upgraded. But before his brain could even process those patch notes, something small brushed against his hand. He glanced down, and his blood ran ice cold. His entire bed was completely swarming with ants. Not digital bugs, not an illusion, but literal physical insects swarming all over his perfectly clean sheets. Acting as if he had personally declared war on the entire insect kingdom. Full on panicking, he bolted from the mattress and yanked at the bedroom door. Locked tight. The terrifying swarm snapped their jaws wide open and launched an all-out biting assault, sharp stinging waves of agony, stacked up rapidly, making him hop around the room like an absolute clown performing some cursed demonic dance. He frantically sprinted toward the window, completely forgetting he lived on the 3rd floor. He tried to violently tackle the glass only to bounce off and crash right back onto the floor. Pure, suffocating dread. Set in quickly replaced by blazing fury. He instantly activated his divine index finger skill, viciously crushing dozens of the tiny attackers into dust. But then the surviving ants calmly drew actual miniature bows and arrows. Are you kidding me? A literal medieval siege in his bedroom. The tiny arrows rained down like a deadly storm. His body was ruthlessly punctured over and over again until just breathing felt like inhaling pure fire. As his vision started fading to black, his eyes locked onto his ultimate trump card, a casual can of bug spray sitting on the desk. Pushing past his limits, he grabbed a cheap lighter and ignited the toxic spray. A massive fireball erupted instantly, incinerating the entire miniature army into crispy ash. This, he proudly realized, was the true devastating power of a god. Unfortunately, it was also the supreme power of an idiot. His entire room caught on fire instantly, and his battered body completely refused to move an inch. As suffocating black smoke filled the air, the cursed system popped up with one more flashing notification. Alert, a high-tier evil god is generously offering you a mysterious gift. Warning, accepting this may permanently lock your moral alignment to evil. Desperate, he slammed the accept button without a single second of hesitation. At first, dead silence. Then the system coldly announced that shattered fragments of power from the silent crawling nightmares were aggressively overwriting his current skill tree. Absolute panic gripped his soul. His divine index finger skill was completely jammed. Right as he was about to get roasted alive like a total noob, the glass window violently exploded inward. A blinding bolt of lightning tore through the inferno. The Lightning Empress dramatically reappeared, snatching him from the jaws of death just seconds before the raging flames swallowed the entire apartment whole. He eventually jolted awake in a sterile hospital bed. His sassy niece immediately demanded solid proof of his identity, forcing him to painfully utter an incredibly humiliating secret password. But before he could even process that critical emotional damage, his terrifying older sister violently breached the room, absolutely screaming at him for calling her a chubby auntie in his sleep. Before he could even formulate a proper apology, an extravagant flower basket mysteriously spawned right at his hospital door. Meanwhile, heavily cloaked in shadows on a nearby rooftop, the Lightning Empress was intensely stalking his window, still struggling to accept the insane reality of their fates. Fast forward to his full recovery, he quickly realized the surviving ants were still trolling him in the most deeply disrespectful ways imaginable. Suddenly, a golden notification popped up. The Ant Saintess and her fanatical followers were desperately offering up a divine tribute. He hit accept, and a blindingly radiant gemstone materialized in his palm, the legendary fruit of the world tree. He choked down the item, and instant regret hit him like a literal truck. It tasted exactly like toxic sludge, left marinating in a public restroom for 80 years. But then a blazing warmth surged through his veins, wiping away every single injury. System alert. A brand new divine function had just unlocked. Divine grace. Wondering what his tiny subjects might actually crave, his gaze locked onto a massive bag of sugar nearby. He ripped it open, letting the sweet crystals cascade down. To the microscopic ant realm below, it was a literal miracle falling from the heavens. The results were absolute madness. Severed limbs regenerated in real time, and their battle morale instantly skyrocketed through the roof. Ping. His phone screen lit up. He had just secured 101. Hardcore true believers, faith generation system, fully operational. He chuckled at the sheer absurdity of it all, yet it felt incredibly satisfying. Later that day, he hit up the local Hunter flea market to score some cash for house repairs. But his blind god's eye passive skill was working overtime. It ruthlessly scanned everyone in sight, exposing every single shady scammer and cheap fraud in the plaza. 3 sketchy dudes were hyping up some absolute trash armor, demanding hundreds of millions for it. Naturally, our main character's inner hero took over, and he totally crashed their little scam. One of the thugs violently grabbed his collar, barking for an apology. Big mistake. He calmly activated his divine index finger skill. Tap. The so-called premium armor instantly shattered into worthless dust. Panic washed over the scammers' faces. Realizing they had just provoked an absolute monster, they bowed furiously and bolted. The shop staff stared in pure awe. They completely mistook him for some legendary hidden master. Quickly, they scanned the remaining gear. The magical energy reading capped out at D rank. He casually snatched the item back. Suddenly, the blind god's eye whispered a prompt. Hand this over to Spark nearby. And no, not Spark from the game, Clash Royale. The real Spark was actually lurking nearby in the shadows. He caught himself slipping. Wait, am I giving off major stalker vibes right now? Blushing like an absolute amateur, he awkwardly marched right up to her. He shoved the ring into her palm and blurted out, "Just take it, it will definitely help you." And then he literally sprinted away. Spark just stood there completely and utterly bewildered. Fast forward to the Hunter Testing Center, where researchers were staring at their monitors in pure disbelief. Her mana output just hit 7,000. That was top tier even for A-rank awakeners. Spark stared at her trembling hands. That random ring had effortlessly skyrocketed her entire power level. Elite S-rank hunters in the room actually started clapping, but her older sister Shang Yang just sneered. "Do not get cocky, Xiaomi. You barely moved up one pathetic tier. If you are chasing some foolish revenge, I will never forgive you." Spark's eyes darkened as she thought to herself, "Sorry, sister, but that is one rule I am going to break. As long as that mysterious guy helps me shatter my limits, vengeance is absolutely mine." Cut back to our main character, who was dead asleep, trapped in a bizarre dream facing the terrifying Ant Emperor. The monstrous ruler issued a chilling command. General Kamakura was to lead 5 million insect soldiers to crush the protagonist. The giant general bowed low. "Your will is my command." He jolted awake, drenched in a cold sweat. Oh crap, that was definitely a prophetic vision. Last time he faced 100,000 bugs. Now the horde was 50 times more massive. His system interface flashed ominously. 3 days until total invasion. And because his luck was absolute trash, the silent nightmare entity reached out again, demanding fresh human sacrifices. He slammed the block button without a second thought. But then, his blind god's eye forcefully projected a hologram of General Kamakura. The colossal insect coldly promised to sever his head from his shoulders. Desperate, he tried using his appraisal skill on his own body. After nearly blinding himself from the strain, the brutal status window popped up, fragile and severely timid. He cursed his pathetic stats. Slumping onto his bed, he reviewed his arsenal. He had traded for some essential survival gear, hoping his great fire skill would combo perfectly with the divine index finger. Reality check. The combo produced a spark weaker than a cheap gas station lighter. He groaned in frustration. What a massive fail. He really should have trashed that skill. But then a literal light bulb went off. He remembered his God of Growth protection buff. Without hesitation, he chugged down 200 potion vials back to back. System notification. His synchronization rate with the evil creator spiked to 10%. Riding the massive power rush, he relentlessly upgraded his blade 20 times over. Completely drained of mana, he instantly passed out hard on his desk. Meanwhile, Spark had picked up some thoughtful little gifts, hoping to ignite a real connection with her mysterious savior. She nervously stood at his front door and rang the bell. Dead silence. Then she noticed the lock was completely busted, and the door was slightly ajar. Pushing it open with extreme caution, she called his name. But the entire apartment was totally deserted, because right at that very moment, our hero was tied up as a hostage in some sketchy, abandoned warehouse. But thanks to his insane potion binge the night before, he was literally still snoring. The dude was completely checked out, floating peacefully in an ocean of sweet dreams while actively being kidnapped. His 3 brutal abductors just stared at him in pure confusion. He was actually giggling in his sleep, mumbling about wanting to catch them all like some anime protagonist. His eyes finally snapped open. Wait, am I currently being kidnapped? The boss, rocking a ridiculous rooster haircut, smirked coldly. Gotta hand it to you, kid. Sleeping through your own abduction is wild. The blind god's eye immediately scanned the threat. Target human male. Special trait wields, completely garbage tier fire magic. Second, target human male. Special trait, pathetically underdeveloped muscle mass. Reading those savage system insults, he instantly recognized the losers he humiliated at the flea market. What is your endgame here? Our main character sighed. You owe us massive compensation for destroying our golden goose, the boss scowled. And how exactly am I supposed to pay you? He asked, playing totally clumsy and dumb. I do not even have my phone to transfer funds. The scrawny thug chuckled darkly, holding up the device. Oh, we made sure to pack it for you. Red alert. His eye skill screamed a warning. The terrifying insect horde was exactly 20 meters away. Panic seized his heart. He shrieked desperately. It wants to catch me. Drop the phone right now. But time had already run out. A terrifying black tide of monsters erupted straight from the screen. They completely swarmed the scrawny thug in a millisecond. In one single horrifying second, the man was erased from existence. The boss and his remaining lackey froze in absolute terror. Trembling with rage, the leader turned his murderous glare toward our hero. You freak! You are a bug tamer! He roared. The surviving lackey desperately summoned a blazing fireball. He hurled it directly into the churning insect swarm, scorching the front line to ash. Our main character watched the flames intently. Wait, the system said his magic was garbage tier, but the boss joined in, unleashing a firestorm that actually incinerated the deadly wave. Panting heavily, the leader locked eyes with our captive protagonist. You are going to pay in blood for my fallen crew member. Pure bloodlust radiated from the boss. The protagonist's muscles coiled tight. The real survival game had just begun. It was game over. But out of nowhere, the boss straight up faceplants. A stray rock smashes his skull, sending crimson splashing everywhere. Our main character stares down in pure disbelief. The ant army had literally built siege catapults. A massive dude scrambles to escape. But the heavy doors won't budge. The catapults unleash absolute hell, painting the room red. Panic completely takes over our guy's mind. Not even. Those massive flames could wipe out this swarm. Is he actually going to make it out alive? If he knew they were this overpowered, he would have trashed that cursed phone on day one. The ant general sneers with pure malice. Evil god, your pathetic minions are wiped out. I will slaughter you right here and feed your corpse to Her Majesty. Suddenly, his phone buzzes. The glowing screen flashes, activating minor miracle. Boom, lightning strikes from the heavens, vaporizing countless ants into literal ash. Spark descends from the sky like an absolute boss, and relief washes over him. But the ant general seethes with pure rage, completely disgusted by this disrespect toward the Emperor's army. To think this guy won't even lift a finger yet commands a subordinate. With this much insane power, this so-called evil god is truly a supreme being, possessing enough raw strength to crush the entire empire. Ripping off his heavy armor, the general roars out, I, Kamakuri, may meet my end today, but I'm dragging your elite minion down to hell with me. Spark unleashes a massive wave of high-voltage electricity. Meanwhile, our clueless main character just stands in the back, flashing a goofy grin, totally blind to the massive death flag waving above them. The ant general starts chanting, 1,000 blades that sever reality itself. I am your humble servant, grant me your destructive. Might I sacrifice my entire squad to you? His loyal troops scream out in sheer terror, begging their commander to spare them. But without a second thought, the ant general ruthlessly decapitates his remaining soldiers in one brutal sweep. Spark and our guy are left completely speechless. Having absorbed his own crew, the ant general radiates a suffocating boss-level aura. The blind God's Eye system instantly triggers Kamakuri female ant special warning. The Imperial General is plotting to slice off Spark's head with 1,000 cursed blades. But before our hero can even process the warning, the general launches herself through the air, zeroing in. On Spark, she instantly fires up her lightning aura. But the general literally slices the lightning bolt in half, charging at Spark with unstoppable momentum. The lethal blade flashes. Spark collapses into a terrifying pool of crimson. Pure, unfiltered rage takes over the main character's mind. These absolutely trash-tier ants. She saved my life. 3 separate times. Suddenly, a glowing system prompt pops up. You can use divine power to rewrite a mortal's destiny. This action requires 100 divine coins. He smashes the confirm button without a second thought. A brilliant golden light erupts from his eyes, channeling divine energy. To shatter the flow of time and alter fate, he rewinds reality back to the exact split second before the general slices the lightning. The general charges forward with terrifying, crushing force. Spark freezes, totally unable to react, bracing herself for the end. But suddenly, the chains binding our hero shatter completely. He violently steps forward and yanks Spark out of harm's way. He glares at the ant general with bone-chilling killer intent. Watching this savage display of power, Spark is convinced he's an absolute legendary master. Our guy screams out, "You're nothing but a worthless bug." He throws up a single finger, ultimate judgment. Divine middle finger, boom. The ant general is completely wiped from existence by the blast. Our guy just stands there looking cold and collected. While Spark stares at him in pure awe, he casually picks up a tiny blade, wondering out loud what kind of loot this is. But a split second later, he drops it like a hot potato, because it's literally burning his hand. She rips off her helmet, eyes sparkling with absolute hype, and asks if he's the legendary hermit. Without warning, she drops to her knees and desperately begs him to take her as his ultimate disciple. Looking totally dumbfounded, he stammers that he's just a bottom-tier trash-rank hunter. He basically admits the system hard-carried him against the boss, meaning he has 0 actual skills to teach her. But Spark simply refuses to take no for an answer, even as he watches. His show's in complete silence. Spark just sits right beside him, locked onto the screen. Completely speechless, he asks how long she plans on crashing at his place. Spark stubbornly declares she isn't leaving until he officially makes her his student. Totally sweating bullets, he tries explaining again that he's literally an E-rank scrub. Spark fires back, claiming that just equipping the ring he gifted her boosted her stats through the roof, since he blessed her with such an overpowered item. She's determined to pay off her massive life debt. Right after that, Spark starts hauling heavy bags of cement, kicking off a massive DIY home renovation. In record time, his rundown, trashy bedroom is transformed into a literal luxury suite, thanks to her crazy grind. Right after enjoying the upgrade, he figures it's time to grab some grub with his new roommate. But suddenly, an urgent emergency alert blares from her comms. Spark sighs, saying dinner will have to wait. She locks her helmet into place and gears up for battle. Before she takes off, he tosses her a rare consumable, the Growth God's protection bottle, for an extra stat buff. Bowing in deep gratitude, Spark launches herself into the sky. Just a little while later, he rolls up to a local diner to grab a bite. Breaking news flashes across the screen. The panicked anchor confirms that an S-rank Calamity-class monster, the troll, has breached the perimeter. Thank God a solo hunter arrived just in time to hold the line while civilians evacuate. But just surviving against this beast is pushing her absolute limits. The absolute madman holding off the Drake alone is none other than the B-rank powerhouse Thunder Empress. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, after tossing a civilian to safety, Spark holds her ground to cover the mass retreat. Staring down an apocalyptic S-rank threat, even our Lightning Queen is sweating bullets. But there's zero time to hesitate. The monster's lethal strike is already tearing through the air. Spark leaps up, pushing her lightning core to maximum overdrive. She knows this clash might actually kill her. The massive Drake suddenly stops moving. The field reporter screams into the mic, the B-rank hunter Thunder Empress just totally soloed the boss. The crowd erupted into deafening cheers. Spark let out a victorious breath, fully believing she had just crushed that S-rank monstrosity. But victory was an illusion. A massive tentacle whipped out of nowhere, slamming into her and sending her flying like a ragdoll. The devastating impact instantly shattered her combat aura. As her vision blurred, her desperate eyes locked onto the God of Growth's protection potion, resting right beside her. While the horrific beast rampaged straight toward the defenseless crowd, Spark didn't hesitate. She chugged the mysterious elixir down to the last drop. Boom! Her vitality skyrocketed back to absolute peak condition. Crackling blue lightning surged through her veins, radiating a destructive energy that could vaporize mountains. With a fierce battle cry, she unleashed 1 billion volts of pure, unadulterated fury. The catastrophic blast completely obliterated the S-rank nightmare into cosmic dust. Soon after, the dust settled, news crews swarmed her. Flashing a radiant smile at the cameras, she proudly credited her epic victory to the miraculous potion gifted by her mysterious master. That viral clip smashed 2 million views in record time. Yet this newly crowned superstar was currently slurping cheap instant noodles right inside our main character's humble living room. He gently suggested she head back before her family started panicking. The room grew heavy as Spark's vibrant smile vanished bitterly, whispering that she had absolutely no one left to wait for her. Trying to lighten the mood, he reassured her that any parent would be losing their minds over such a gorgeous daughter. But her eyes darkened with sorrow as she revealed the tragic truth. Her parents perished in the catastrophic incident, caused by the abyss-fallen dragon. That legendary apocalyptic beast was a nightmare made of scales and hellfire. Humanity had to sacrifice millions of brave souls just to finally bring it down. Realization struck him like a physical blow, and he awkwardly covered his mouth in deep regret. To make up for prying into her painful past, he quickly slid his own bowl of black bean noodles over to her. Her sorrow melted away into a heartwarming sunlit smile. Right on cue, a glowing system prompt flashed across his phone screen. Ding Target's affection and absolute trust metrics have reached the maximum threshold. The system notification continued, with a game-changing twist. If the target verbally confirms the sacred keyword, the divine faith sequence will officially awaken. The required activation phrase was incredibly cringe. Believe in the one true God. Our guy cringed hard internally, screaming that this was a hardcore survival system, not some cheesy dating sim. But then his gamer instincts kicked in. Unlocking this faith system would literally print divine coins for him exactly like it did with that overpowering saint from before. With the terrifying Ant Legion plotting their next invasion in the shadows, he desperately needed every single upgrade he could get. Cold hard divine cash was his only ticket to survival. Swallowing his massive pride, he awkwardly asked his beautiful guest to repeat a super embarrassing line. Just say, "I believe in the one true God." The sheer cringe of his own words made him drop to his knees in pure agony, his face burning bright red. He desperately backpedaled, apologizing profusely for sounding like a total weirdo cult leader. But to his absolute shock, the stunning girl didn't even blink. Looking at him with the fierce loyalty of a golden retriever, she passionately declared her faith in the one true God. Boom, the system interface exploded with dazzling golden light. Ding, divine faith successfully established. Congratulations, Song Miri has officially become your very first apostle on Earth. A legendary new feature unlocked, the skill-sharing authority. He now had direct access to his followers' insane abilities, but instead of cheering, he threw a massive fit, screaming that this trash-tier game scammed him out of his precious divine coins, threatening to rage, quit, and delete the app on the spot. As Spark tilted her head in pure confusion, an ominous spatial rift violently ripped open right behind her back. A bizarre delegation of mutated ants marched out of the void, nervously lugging heavy treasure chests. They had actually come crawling back to beg for a peace treaty with our overpowered main character. Completely ignoring their peace offering, his gamer curiosity took over. He wanted to test drive his brand new electric toy. With a mischievous smirk, he casually raised his right hand. System command initiate skill share. In a split second, the air pressure dropped dangerously low as he actually summoned a catastrophic thunderstorm indoors. An apocalyptic pillar of raw lightning completely blew the roof off his own house. The terrifying voltage mercilessly fried the entire peace-seeking ant squad, instantly turning the monster bugs into smoking piles of crispy ash. Spark's jaw dropped before her eyes sparkled with intense admiration. "Oh my god, Master, you are a master of lightning arts too. You are absolutely legendary," she cheered wildly. Meanwhile, our guy's soul was actively leaving his body. He wanted to sob uncontrollably, but he was too dead inside. He had literally just paid for those home renovations. Furious neighbors were already yelling from across the street, begging the crazy menace to let them sleep in peace. Meanwhile, deep within the nightmarish abyss of the monster realm, the monstrous ant emperor received the devastating news. His peaceful diplomats were brutally roasted, consumed by absolute fury. The monstrous tyrant immediately deployed his deadliest elite vanguard for all-out war. The monstrous king swore a blood oath to erase our main character from existence. Back in the human world, our guy was casually supervising Spark's brutal training routine. In a flash, she crushed a grueling 100-lap sprint. Without missing a beat, he tossed her another glowing vial of the god of growth's protection. To his overpowered inventory, it was just another cheap consumable drop. But for his new apprentice, it was a literal divine miracle. Since he officially claimed her as his disciple, he felt obligated to buff her stats, even if spamming cheat potions was his only real mentoring strategy. Panting heavily, she fiercely demanded her next impossible task. He lazily told her to hit the squats. While she suffered, a genius idea struck him. It was time to scan her hidden potential using the mythical Eye of the Blind God. He figured scanning her stats would give him a solid cheat sheet for her leveling path. Activating the ancient ocular skill, his vision pierced straight through her physical form. Ding, warning, consciousness has breached the target's deepest spiritual domain. In a blink, his soul was aggressively pulled into an unimaginably vast, desolate mindscape. A blinding flash of celestial light erupted, forcing him to shield his eyes. As the glare faded, an awe-inspiring colossal white tiger wreathed in. Roaring thunder materialized bound by massive cursed iron chains. The system revealed the shocking truth. Spark's core essence was pure S. Rank brutally locked away a decade ago. This bubbly girl was actually a walking weapon of mass destruction. 10 years ago, the legendary all-crushing divine finger had forced this apocalyptic power into submission. If he could somehow shatter these mystical chains, her supreme S-rank potential would finally awaken. Summoning his own divine finger authority, he struck the cursed bindings with everything he had, but the metallic restraints barely cracked, forcing him to tactically retreat and regroup for now. Snapping back to reality, he waved goodbye to his exhausted disciple and trudged back to his ruined house. Staring at the massive hole in his ceiling, his soul completely left his body. Just then, his phone vibrated with an eerie notification. The sneaky nightmare entity sent a pathetic weeping emoji, while the heavenly killing sword glared at him with intense, murderous intent. Wait a minute, he thought, is this edgy sword guy, the owner of that pathetic fruit knife I found earlier? Reading his mind perfectly, the heavenly killing sword furiously spammed the chat. How dare you call my god slaying apocalyptic divine weapon a cheap kitchen utensil? Our guy was absolutely paralyzed with shock. Hold up, are these cosmic entities literally snooping inside my brain right now? He was officially dealing with a bunch of overpowered multi-dimensional stalkers. Sneaky Nightmare flooded his notifications with desperate pleas to be unblocked. Meanwhile, the heavenly slaughtering blade demanded his divine sword back. Reading this, our boy practically blew a gasket. He literally dragged himself through hell and back to claim that legendary weapon. Trying to sweeten the deal, the slaughtering blade offered 2 million divine coins, straight from the ant delegation's stolen stash. Our MC cursed at his screen. You absolute scrub, flexing stolen cash like a cheap villain. Lurking in the chat, Sneaky Nightmare dropped a massive flex. Hand over the sword, and I will drop 10 million coins right now. 10 million. Our guy's eyes practically turned into shiny dollar signs. With that kind of bank, he could instantly grab lower-tier omnipotence gear or stack up rare potions for Spark. Seeing this hesitation, the slaughtering blade started sweating bullets. Sneaky Nightmare mercilessly roasted the blade, calling him a broke beggar. That completely shattered the blade's massive ego. In a fit of absolute rage, the blade offered up his own authority. He showed off his ultimate move, Sword Zenith, claiming whoever wields it becomes completely untouchable. Our MC locked in the deal without hesitating. Let us be real, wielding a legendary blade is every gamer's ultimate fantasy. But Sneaky Nightmare just chuckled darkly. He ordered the MC to accept his own authority instead. The night blooming rose. He promised this dark power could wipe out enemies without breaking a sweat. Suddenly, a genius scheme formed in our hero's mind. He hit the absolute jackpot. He secured Sword Zenith 2 million divine coins and 3 legendary treasure uses from the blade, plus the mysterious night blooming rose. He reminded himself to hoard those 3 treasure uses like his life depended on it. Time for a test drive. He sat cross-legged on the floor, focused his aura, and screamed, "Night blooming rose." Crickets. Absolutely nothing happened. His phone dryly notified him that the skill only activates while the user is deep in slumber. He threw his hands up in pure frustration. Then how am I supposed to see what it does? I am such a total clown for trusting a literal stalker. Pivoting his strategy, he triggered Sword Zenith. Still, nothing. The rage bubbling inside him was enough to cause a 3-year stress ulcer. But seconds later, his screen flashed. Sword Zenith was active. His pupils dilated as he uncontrollably muttered, "I need to slice everything to pieces." The tiny kitchen knife in his grip surged with an overwhelming sinister aura. He compulsively licked the blade and bolted toward the restaurant next door. Like a man possessed by a culinary demon, he spent the entire night frantically chopping 100,000 green onions with terrifying precision. He dragged himself home the next morning, totally wiped out. What kind of garbage ability hijacks my body like that? At least nobody got hurt. He crashed onto his bed and blacked out. But under the moonlight, an insect army swarmed his roof. Spotting their sleeping target, they closed in for the kill. Suddenly, a spectral rose burst from his chest. Its petals peeled back to reveal a monstrous maw swallowing the entire front line in one sickening crunch. The mosquito mother gasped in pure terror. "The nightmare flower," she shrieked. The ancient horror from 3,000 years ago. It was the very entity that wiped out 90% of the continent. Known as the god of sinful calamity, the ultimate enforcer of sneaky nightmare. But the mosquito mother suppressed her trembling. She rallied her troops, declaring they had absolutely nothing to fear. "Today our bloodline achieves legendary status," she roared, diving straight toward him. The rest of the swarm blindly followed her suicidal charge. But their attacks phased right through the phantom petals. In a flash of crimson, the rose inhaled the entire swarm like they were nothing. Driven to madness, the mosquito mother shrieked, "If I cannot slay the evil god, I will drag his demonic apostle straight to hell with me." She unleashed her absolute strongest ultimate attack, but the demonic flower just opened wide and casually snacked on her energy blast. The mother stared in mind-numbing disbelief before the jaws snapped shut around her too. The next morning when our MC finally woke up, he groaned, rubbing his incredibly bloated stomach. Half asleep, he blindly reached for his buzzing phone. The screen was blowing up. The Saintess and her followers were desperately spamming him for a rescue. He instantly fired up the Eye of the Brago god. Scanning their territory, the dark truth was revealed. His loyal believers had been completely poisoned by the ruthless bee clan. Our boy face-palmed hard. They totally poked a glowing beehive just for a sweet treat. He booted up his PC, desperate to find an antidote. Ping, the system announced that because the one god heard his followers' desperate cries, a brand new feature was unlocked. The miracle system was now online. Unleashing these divine acts would force his believers to worship him with absolute awe or sheer terror. But saving them with a healing miracle carried a hefty price tag of 100,000 divine coins. He smashed the confirm button without blinking. Channeling the essence of the world tree fruit, he previously absorbed the divine energy flared. "That should do the trick," he mumbled. But the massive energy drain hit him like a freight train, making his eyelids incredibly heavy. He passed out almost instantly. His phone lit up again. Title upgrade. Benevolent Savior had just hit rank D. Even crazier, the one god's core alignment officially shifted from evil to true neutral across the celestial realm. Other benevolent deities sensed this cosmic shift. The goddess of infinite abundance completely locked her divine sights on him. Meanwhile, down in the microscopic ant realm, the Saintess and her people collapsed with swollen, twisted faces praying for salvation. Suddenly, a single glowing raindrop fell from the heavens. Countless raindrops plummet from the heavens. The torrential downpour completely washes away the lethal ant venom. Falling to her knees, the Saintess passionately screams that the one true God has delivered them from the jaws of death once again. Now her clan must repay this divine grace with absolute devotion. They immediately begin gathering rare materials to forge epic offerings for their savior. Fast forward an unknown amount of time. Our main character blinks awake from a seriously deep sleep. It turns out Spark, the system assistant, is actually chilling right inside his room. She hits him with some serious side-eye, complaining that he totally bailed on their training session. So, she came to check up on him. Then, she points her finger at the bizarre statue sitting on his desk. Our guy glances over. The Shadow Clan crafted this monument of the one true God with overflowing gratitude, trying their absolute best to capture his divine image. But here is the catch. This thing is horrifyingly ugly. Completely speechless, the main character breaks out in a cold sweat, claiming he has absolutely zero clue what that monstrosity is. But Spark strongly disagrees. She claims the statue captures his vibe perfectly, and honestly, the longer she stares, the cuter it gets. Catching feelings for the weird artwork, she asks if she can take it home. He instantly gives her the green light just to get rid of it. After finally sending Spark on her way, He stretches out, ready for some well-deserved relaxation, but his smartphone suddenly blasts a red alert. The legendary world tree sapling is critically ill, and it is destined to wither away into dust in exactly 24 hours. Panic mode activated. He frantically spams the God of Growth protection buff, but the system absolutely refuses to cooperate. This is a total disaster. The world tree produces legendary healing fruits, the exact same ones that saved his life. If he nurses it back to health, he can sell that divine loot for massive profit. Desperate, he scrolls frantically through the divine shop interface. Bingo. He finally spots a legendary item called the Tears of Endless Abundance. But there is a massive catch. Only users officially certified as pure-hearted by the goddess can wield it. Clicking purchase instantly triggers a mandatory side quest. Cut to our guy literally picking up cigarette butts off the pavement. Talk about a harsh reality check. To save the mythological world tree, an overpowered being like him is doing actual community service. After hours of breaking his back over trash, the system coldly dings. His goodwill meter only crept up by a pathetic 10%. He still needs a grinding 90% to clear this nightmare quest. Out of nowhere, a gruff voice demands to know what he is doing on their turf. The main character spins around. He locks eyes with an absolute unit of a homeless man bulging with intimidating muscles. Survival instincts kick in. He remembers hearing about intense territorial wars on these streets. Moving at the speed of light, he pulls out a crisp $1 bill and offers it up as tribute. But the muscle-bound man absolutely loses his mind. He furiously roars, asking how a brat dares to throw pity money at the great Choi Gon-san. Wait, did he just say Choi Gon-san? The gears turn in our guy's head. That is the legendary S-rank hunter, who literally started from the bottom as a street sweeper. He swiftly snatches the dollar back, deadpanning that he will gladly keep it. Glancing at his system screen, he feels incredibly robbed. He literally just gave to charity, but his goodwill meter did not budge a single millimeter. Then reality hits him like a truck. He just tried to bribe a raging drunk. Obviously, the system is not handing out holy points for that. Deciding to try a different tactic, the main character calls out to the grumpy old-timer. But Choi Gon-san explodes with blazing wrath, demanding to know why this punk just called him a grandpa. Quick on his feet, our guy whips out a plastic bag and smoothly suggests putting the liquor bottle inside for safekeeping, casually dropping the word brother. That honorific works. Like absolute magic, Choi Gon-san instantly beams with pure joy. Just as things settle, a blaring siren shatters the peace, a monster outbreak. Our guy immediately prepares to dip, but Gon-san violently grabs him by the collar and launches them both into the stratosphere. They are literally flying through the sky. When he finally catches his breath and glances down, his soul almost leaves his body. They crash land straight into an abandoned factory zone, and the main character is practically foaming at the mouth. The moment Ganson lets go, he face plants into the dirt. Looming right in front of them is a gargantuan mutated toad monster. Ganson smirks like an absolute maniac. Looks like deep-fried toad legs are on the midnight menu. Without missing a beat, he charges headfirst at the beast. Suddenly, the system screen flashes crimson. Lethal threat detected, hostile killing intent. Locked onto the authority owner. In a split second, the demonic nightmare flower erupts violently from the main character's body. It unhinges a terrifying jaw and chomps down on both the mutant, Toad, and Choi Ganson. In the blink of an eye, the terrifying plant swallows them whole in a single, devastating gulp. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to an entirely different dimension. The protagonist wanders into a mystical, ethereal forest. As he stands up, he spots a mysterious figure draped in flowing white robes standing right in his path. He steps forward, stuttering out a desperate question about his location. The enigmatic figure slowly removes their hat. With absolute reverence, they welcome back their grand and merciful deity. Completely paralyzed by shock, he can only stare, as massive dimensional cracks spiderweb across his vision. Boom. He snaps violently back to the real world. The first thing he sees is Choi Ganson, face down in the dirt, absolutely covered in mystery slime. The legendary S-rank hunter is literally crying for his mommy. He is absolutely traumatized, sobbing about getting eaten alive by a demonic flower. Holding his breath, our guy gags at the horrific stench. Did this dude take a swim in a septic tank? He mutters under his breath in pure disgust. Suddenly, his smartphone chimes with a glowing victory notification. It declares he successfully obliterated a high-ranking subordinate of an evil god. He massively contributed to global peace and absolutely shattered the goodwill quest requirements. Time for the epic loot drop. As a reward, he receives the legendary miracle item, Tears of Endless Abundance. The divine effect of the crystal tears activates immediately, washing over the world tree sapling and bringing it fully back to life. A greedy millionaire smile spreads across his face. It is finally time to harvest those magical fruits and become absurdly filthy rich. The system chimes in again. Congratulations on flawlessly reviving the divine world tree. It states that he has successfully established the absolute foundation for the Dark Tribe's ultimate resurrection. To show their undying loyalty, the Shadowy Tribe has offered up another monument of the one true God. After dragging a deeply traumatized Choi Gonsen to the emergency room, he finally heads back home. Locking eyes with that hideous statue sitting on his desk, he is utterly speechless. In what universe does this ugly thing look like? My handsome face, he grumbles internally. But his phone instantly lights up with a crazy synchronization update because the statue allegedly mirrors his image. His direct empathy rate with the little ants in the evil god creator's dimension has skyrocketed to 10%. Right on cue, a fresh notification pops up on his screen. Oh, our grand and eternally merciful, one true God. He stares blankly at the glowing text, never in a million years imagining that he would be exchanging text messages with a literal colony of ants. Another desperate SOS message floods his screen. They are begging him to save the Dark Tribe members, who are currently facing total annihilation from a swarm of magical beasts. The main character just intensely stares at the digital ants, completely questioning his life choices. Sprawled in the dirt, our main character absolutely loses his mind. Who did this? He roars, eyes blazing with furious intent. He immediately demands to be taken straight to those magical beasts, vowing to crush them into dust with his own bare hands. Hearing their god's wrath, the tiny ants weep absolute tears of joy. Lead the way he commands with epic main character energy. But honestly, they are literally just ants, so their marching speed is painfully slow. Suddenly, the tiny squad freezes in absolute terror. He zooms in with his smartphone camera, squinting to see the legendary threat looming up ahead. But the truth hits him like a freight train. It is not a magical beast at all. It is a massive, skin-crawling swarm of mutant cockroaches. All that fake bravery instantly vanishes. Our fearless god violently spins on his heel and sprints away at lightning speed. Watching their supreme deity dip out the guide, ants spiral into total panic, desperately scrambling to outrun the giant roach army. But amidst the chaos, the holy ant stands her ground. Do not falter, she preaches to her trembling followers. She gestures dramatically behind them, screaming that their almighty one god has their backs. But when she dynamically turns around, her jaw drops. Her almighty savior is already miles away. The holy ant is utterly shattered by this massive betrayal. Watching his retreating back, the colony erupts into chaotic wailing. Our deity has forsaken us, they cry out, convinced the apocalypse is right here, right now. Cut to a few moments later. An ocean of obliterated roach corpses litters the battlefield. Luckily, our boy harbors a deep personal hatred for roaches, meaning his apartment was heavily stocked with military-grade bug spray. Now, the surviving ants march proudly through the toxic wasteland, brutally executing any twitching cockroach foolish enough to cling to life. Glancing down, he notices the holy ant looking completely soul-crushed. Scratching his head, he awkwardly asks her why she is so depressed when they literally just wiped out the invaders. At those words, the holy ant bursts into ugly tears. She completely misread the situation, confessing she actually dared to doubt the grand master plan of the one god. Begging for ultimate punishment, she drops to her knees and demands execution. Just as he awkwardly reaches out to pat her tiny head, a glowing system notification pops up. A golden screen announces he just triggered the hidden conditions for an exclusive divine ability, the divine thumb of multiplication. Without hesitating, he smashes the claim button. The system spits out an incredibly dramatic lore description, making him cringe at the pure edginess. But right as he gears up to test this new buff, his webtoon manager slides into his direct messages, demanding an in-person meetup right away. Rolling up to the designated cafe, he is completely caught off guard. His manager is actually a dude. Stunned silent, he quickly calculates a master plan scarf down a free meal, then immediately ghosts him. But this manager is intense. Locking eyes, the guy practically barks at him to start taking his comic seriously. He goes on a passionate rant insisting that our guy is dripping with raw, unfiltered potential, but he is throwing it all in the trash. Sweating bullets, our boy stammers out random excuses. But then, his phone vibrates violently. A critical alert flashes across the screen. The Shadow Tribe is under attack by another wave of vicious beasts. The system prompts him, asking if he wants to multiply his ant army to obliterate the threat. Duh. He instantly taps the multiply button, but catching him glued to his screen, the manager snaps. Are you seriously gaming right now? Pushed to the limit, the manager jumps up and delivers a soul-shaking slap right to his face. Meanwhile, back in the microscopic realm, the Ant Legion locks into a deadly battle formation. Perched atop a towering monument, the holy ant raises her arms to the heavens. Witness the glory, she screeches. The supreme, one god, shall rain down absolute destruction upon our enemies. And just like that, another victory alert pops up on his cracked screen. He successfully annihilated the god of destruction's beast, bagging a jaw-dropping 300 million divine coins. Fast forward to the present, he is painfully dragging his feet down a deserted alleyway. He barely survived that awkward cafe brawl with his dignity intact. Suddenly, a golden VIP notification shines. The celestial entity, Endless Abundance, has offered full sponsorship. Thanks to achieving the legendary Benevolent Savior rank, he is granted VIP access to pick literally any overpowered skill in the entire system catalog, completely funded by his celestial sponsor, Endless Abundance. With zero hesitation, he scrolls straight to the most ridiculously expensive ultra-tier skill, the creation of heaven and earth. It is the signature divine technique of the supermoon god, flexing an astronomical price tag of a 1 followed by 100,000 zeros. But the system ruthlessly hits him with a reality check. An error message warns that his mortal vessel is way too weak to handle the true creation of heaven and earth. Instead, the system forcibly downgrades the ultimate skill. It morphs into a bootleg version, the fake creation of heaven and earth, restricted to a one-time use. But the moment he activates it, reality itself starts glitching. That night, civilians around the globe freeze in absolute shock, staring up at the cosmos. An eerie, massive second moon has spawned right beside the original one. Cut to a dark, blood-soaked hideout. A terrified thug violently shivers on the floor. Looming over him is a fully naked giant, casually chilling on a mountain of mangled corpses. This absolutely unhinged Tarzan wannabe tilts his head, demanding to know if the Thunder Emperor is the one messing with his guildmaster. Paralyzed by fear, the trembling thug gives a pathetic nod. Flashing a psychotic grin, the naked berserker vows to hunt her down and have some fun under that glowing yellow moon. The very next morning, our main character is dying from a monstrous headache. Slumping on the concrete stairs, he supervises Spark's brutal training arc. Pushing past her limits, Spark easily crushes 500 laps. In a mind-blowing 5 minutes flat, barely letting her breathe, he barks an order to hold a plank position so he can safely dive back into her spiritual mindscape. Do not move a single muscle, he warns her with a dead serious gaze. Then he fires up the legendary Eye of the Blind God. In a flash of blinding light, his consciousness is violently pulled back into Spark's soul realm. But this time, the atmosphere is totally different. The colossal Thunder Tiger is no longer leaking murderous intent. Channeling his aura into the divine index finger, our boy goes to work shattering the mystical chains binding the beast. Even though several heavy shackles remain, the magical restrictions are already crumbling away. Overjoyed, the massive Thunder Tiger leans in and affectionately licks his face like a giant golden retriever. Popping back into the physical world, he immediately commands Spark to unleash her aura, testing if their spiritual grinding actually paid off. Boom, the destructive energy output completely shatters his expectations. Spark's eyes shine with absolute hype. This insane training is actually making me a monster, she cheers. Riding that adrenaline rush, she blasts off like a rocket to crush 200 more laps. Meanwhile, our boy's smartphone vibrates again, dropping yet another game-changing system alert. Saintess Tess begs for a proper title. He thinks it over for a second, calling her Saintess Tess forever. Yeah, that just would not vibe right for a supreme being. From that exact moment on, she is reborn as Little White. The second the name drops, her eyes well up with absolute devotion, sobbing tears of pure, unadulterated joy. Instantly, the rest of the swarm swarms him, begging the heavens for their own epic titles, but manually naming hundreds of bugs one by one. Bro, nobody has time for that grind. So he hits them with the most basic labels possible. Number 1, number 2, number 3, and so on. Fast forward a bit, and our guy finally logs off and heads home. His phone suddenly lights up with a massive system notification. The ant swarm just evolved into the mighty Formica tribe, all thanks to the divine blessing of the one god's naming, and the hardcore experience points they grinded from hunting savage beasts. Watching them scurry around their base, he cannot help but think these little guys are actually incredibly adorable. Boom. With the Formica tribe hitting their next evolution tier, the one god ranks up to level 2. This massive leap unlocks a game-changing feature, the rebirth of civilization. Playing the ultimate omniscient overseer, our main character guides his tiny subjects. They construct massive defensive walls, set up intense combat training camps, and cultivate sprawling farmlands. Stepping up as the ultimate hype woman, Saintess Little White proudly broadcasts this divine miracle to the masses. She rallies the entire tribe, urging every single bug to bear witness and worship the great one god together. Honestly, our protagonist is getting totally attached to these pixelated pets. But then his finger hovers over the screen. He taps the mysterious third system option, the one hiding behind a glowing, ominous question mark. No warning, no countdown. A terrifying spire oozing demonic, sinister energy crashes into their world. Behold the Tower of Warriors. Only the absolute most fearless elite fighters dare to enter its gates. A blood-red system warning flashes. The survival rate for challengers, a brutal 1 in 10,000. Just feeling the crushing aura of the warrior tower sends the entire ant tribe spiraling into absolute chaotic panic. Reacting in a flash, our main character smashes the surrounding walls to completely seal off the tower's entrance. He issues a strict divine command. Stay the heck away from that cursed place. Yet burning with sheer curiosity among the terrified crowd, one lone ant stares down at his own trembling hands. Flashbacks of his tribe being slaughtered and pushed to the brink of extinction flood his mind. A desperate hunger for power ignites within him. He just wishes he had the raw strength to protect everyone. Locking his gaze on that looming tower, the ant makes a silent, unbreakable vow to get stronger. Meanwhile, far away in the dark depths of the Shadow Realm, the Ant Emperor is absolutely losing his mind. He explodes in blinding rage at a trembling cockroach minion. Even his elite roach army completely failed to assassinate our protagonist, the so-called Dark God of the Shadow faction. Boiling over with pure, unstoppable fury, the Emperor casually raises his left hand. Bam! He obliterates the cockroach into a messy splatter with a single devastating strike. He roars, cursing his insect troops as absolute trash, questioning if he seriously has to descend and crush this pest himself. But before he can move, a chillingly calm voice cuts through the tension. "Please quell your wrath, your majesty." A seductive but deadly spider spirit glides out from the shadows, bowing with perfect respect before the raging monarch. She smooth-talks him, begging the Emperor to leave these pathetic mortal matters in her capable hands. His only focus should be preparing for his legendary ascension to the divine realm. With a deadly glint in her eyes, the spider spirit swears to completely wipe out the dark faction bugs and the fake god they foolishly worship. She is willing to stake her very life on this assassination. To do the dirty work, she enlists an absolute apex predator, a mutant mosquito who rules over his kind like a true tyrant. Just one single bite from this freak, it sucks a victim entirely dry in seconds. Right now, he is literally wiping his mouth after draining a zombie into dust. In the eerie distance, the spider spirit slowly materializes from the mist. Resting in her palm is an artifact practically dripping with malice. The infamous cursed needle. She tosses the wicked weapon to the Mosquito King. The mission is crystal clear. Assassinate the main character and wipe the dark god off the map permanently. The mosquito lets out a spine-chilling raspy laugh. Oh, he is practically drooling at the thought of tasting a supreme evil god's divine blood. The spider spirit just shoots him a freezing glare. "Do whatever you want," she snaps coldly. But as the mosquito fuses the cursed needle into his own flesh, a treacherous plot brews in his mind. The second he drains that god-tier blood and absorbs that boundless power, he is going to rip the Ant Emperor straight off his throne. He will crown himself the ultimate unstoppable ruler of the swarm. Meanwhile, back in the human world, our main character is busy engaging in absolute peak toxicity. Our boy taps into the forbidden power of 20 years of being single, unleashing Godspeed typing skills. He is flaming his teammates with absolute fury, defending his gamer honor like his life depends on it. He does not stop trashing them until his keyboard is literally smoking. Once he finally claims his toxic victory, he grabs his phone to check in on his ant empire. The colony is dead silent, sleeping heavily for the night. But wait, out of nowhere he spots a massive rock violently shaking. Wait, not just shaking. In the next split second, a single tiny ant completely hoists the boulder over its head, and that rock is easily 10 times its own size. It is none other than Number 1. The fierce warrior of the Gami tribe is grinding his stats in secret, pushing past his limits to protect his people. Our main character scratches his head, debating if he should toss the little guy a buff. Deciding to play the benevolent deity, he drops a legendary god of growth protection potion straight into the tank. Holding the divine drop, Number 1 is trembling so hard with emotion he cannot even voice his overwhelming gratitude. Feeling pretty good about himself, our boy swivels back to his glowing monitor, immediately jumping back into the digital trenches to flame more noobs. He is totally dangerously oblivious to the lethal shadow lurking outside his window. The mutant mosquito locks onto its target. After a tense standoff, the assassin finally makes its deadly move. It dive bombs straight at his face, sinking its stinger dead center into his forehead. Smack. Pure instinct kicks in, and he violently slaps the bug away. Seriously, why are there still mosquitoes when it is practically freaking winter? But the annoyance instantly vanishes. In the very next heartbeat, a bone-shattering supernatural frost violently courses through his veins. It feels like his soul just nosedived into an endless glacier. He lets out a massive sneeze, and to his absolute horror, a projectile of snot violently launches exactly 26 feet across the room. Freaking out, our main character bolts to the bathroom to splash some water on his face. But the second he locks eyes with his reflection in the mirror, a terrifying demonic brand is searing itself directly into his forehead. His passive skill, the Blind God's Eye, instantly triggers a bright red system alert. It identifies the horrifying tattoo as the mark of the ugly plague knight. A spine-chilling deathly curse has just been activated. What the heck is happening right now? His parents' legacy in the game still rested on his shoulders. He couldn't afford a single second of doubt. System alert. A brutal chain of debuffs crashed into him. First came the curse of sorrow, followed by bone-crushing muscle agony and severe anemia. Panic set in. He desperately scrolled through the divine shop and locked onto the Rota pill. But right as his finger smashed the purchase button, a glaring quest notification hijacked his screen. Left completely out of options, he dragged his broken body toward the hospital all alone. Meanwhile, inside the clinical white walls of the hospital, a shady figure scanned the room with paranoid eyes. This guy was a hardcore fanatic of a sinister, evil god. Completely brainwashed by dark dogma, his twisted mission was crystal clear. Trigger a suicide bombing and serve everyone inside as human sacrifices to his dark lord. Back to our main character, he finally breached the hospital doors. But his stamina was so utterly drained he was literally crawling across the cold floor tiles. It was painfully obvious this insane system quest was a rigged death trap. The objective: rescue exactly 100 human lives, and do it with absolute pure devotion. Failing meant instantly bleeding out right there in the lobby. Up ahead, the crazy cultist had a terrified nurse in a brutal chokehold, clutching a detonator and screaming for the crowd to freeze. Across the tense room, Spark glared daggers at the psycho, his aura flaring and ready to strike at a microsecond's notice. Our guy watched this chaotic standoff in pure confusion until the deranged cultist locked eyes on the demonic seal, glowing on our main character's forehead. Assuming they were brothers in arms, the madman instantly screamed for backup. Let us slaughter these sheep together and summon the god of destruction. Hearing this twisted garbage, Spark's fury completely boiled over. He aggressively demanded to know what kind of absolute delusion the terrorist was spitting loudly, declaring that the psycho was dead wrong, because that injured man on the floor was actually his mentor. The bald fanatic just sneered with pure arrogance and pointed out that the dark skull mark on our hero's forehead was their holy crest. An incredibly sinister aura leaked from the fanatic. There was absolutely zero doubt left. This lunatic was a high-ranking pawn sent directly by Lord John. Ignoring the pain, our boy locked his intense, piercing gaze onto the target and triggered the eye of the blind god. He instantly hacked straight into the enemy's corrupted memories. The vision revealed a menacing, purple-haired villain, barking a cold-blooded order: make them drown in absolute terror before you slaughter them. This psychological torture would ensure the god of destruction's arrival, was fueled by an overwhelming feast of dark energy. Snapping back to reality, our main character realized exactly how catastrophic this threat truly was. Time was officially up. The fanatic screamed a psychotic prayer to his dark god, his thumb violently pressing down on the detonator switch. Moving on, pure adrenaline, our hero pointed his index finger like a loaded gun. He instantly unleashed the supreme crushing divine finger, but he was a deadly millisecond too late. The button clicked down. Completely drained of mana, our hero roared at Spark that it was now or never. The cultist stared at his remote in absolute paralyzed shock. Silence. No explosion happened. Total panic washed over his ugly face, wasting zero time. Spark called down a merciless, heaven-shattering bolt of lightning. The cultist got deep-fried instantly, violently losing every ounce of motor control. His job done, our exhausted hero collapsed hard onto the tiles, his vision fading to black. But right before his mind slipped into the abyss, an incredibly eerie voice echoed through his brain. The curse of necrosis had activated. Suddenly his soul was dragged into a massive, endless void. He wandered through this terrifying, infinite nothingness for what felt like agonizing hours. Finally, a booming voice shattered the silence. Newborn God, you actually forced my divine hand. I will personally guarantee that you drown in infinite terror, endless death, and unimaginable agony in the blink of an eye. An army of colossal demons towering hundreds of meters into the dark sky manifested right in front of him. Our hero was completely frozen in absolute terror. But then the legendary nightmare flower bloomed out of nowhere behind the titans, chomping down with one monstrous bite. It instantly swallowed those arrogant monsters completely whole. System alert, quest completed. Congratulations on utterly shattering the survival requirements. You successfully rescued the hostages and defied death itself. The master of the medical tome is incredibly pleased with your righteous spirit. Reward granted, the legendary Rhoda pill. Flash forward 24 hours. Our guy jolted awake with something strange on his tongue and instinctively chewed it down. A massive wave of healing energy exploded through his veins. Every single broken bone, gaping wound, and cursed sickness vanished into pure thin air. Hidden bonus unlocked. A dazzling shard of pure divine power melted seamlessly right into his core. Meanwhile, just down the hall, Spark was getting totally mobbed by crazy fans screaming for his autograph. Using the chaotic crowd as a perfect smokescreen, our hero slipped away into the shadows. Safe back at his apartment, he crashed hard onto his mattress, totally blown away by the Rhoda pill's god-tier healing effects. Out of nowhere, his phone violently buzzed. It was a desperate SOS from number 1, begging the one true God for salvation. The text flashed on the screen: "O Supreme God, please forgive my intrusion. But is there any possible way I can acquire more of your divine medicine?" Just minutes earlier, our main character bolts upright. Panic sets in. What on earth just happened? Number 1 lies sprawled on the cold ground, his tiny frame violently twitching. He had risked it all, diving into the brutal warrior tower just to protect his beloved tribe. The moment he pushed open that massive first door, an eerie mechanical voice echoed through the halls. Candidate number 1 has officially initiated the trial. The dreaded first-floor boulder trial kicks off instantly. His only way out, scaling a massive, treacherous staircase all the way up to the second level. Number 1 charges forward, absolute focus burning in his eyes. He remembers the sacred elixir his great god bestowed upon him surging through his veins and skyrocketing his stats. It even forced a sudden class change, just so he could equip that heavy-duty armor. But distracted by his own sheer power, he completely misses the colossal shadow materializing right above his head. Bam! A devastating impact sends him tumbling violently down the stone steps, pinning his crushed body against the rugged wall. The giant boulder vanishes into thin air, but the bone-shattering agony, yeah, that stays. The tiny ant screeches in pure pain, crying out for his divine savior. Back in reality, our main character synchronizes with his followers' memories, forced to watch number 1's broken form in high definition. A heavy wave of guilt crashes over him. He suddenly wonders, did all those random ants he squashed for fun back in the day suffer this exact same nightmare? A glowing crimson system window flashes. Warning: subject number 1 will expire in exactly 10 seconds. Pure panic takes over. He desperately spams the blessing of the growth god, but absolutely nothing happens. 8 seconds left on the clock. Then 7. He rips at his own hair, his mind spiraling into absolute suffocating despair. Suddenly, his eyes lock onto his glowing hand. A forgotten quest reward flashes through his memory. Only 5 agonizing seconds remaining. He instantly sacrifices 100 gold coins, unlocking the ultimate privilege to cast Divine Healing Medicine. Blinding holy light erupts from his palm as the skill activates. 3 seconds left on the death timer. He unleashes the golden energy straight into number 1's fading soul. A miracle unfolds. The ant's crushed limbs twitch, and he slowly pushes himself off the blood-stained floor. A massive sigh of relief escapes our hero's lips. He actually came back from the dead. Inside the system, number 1 bursts into heavy, ugly tears, bowing endlessly to his magnificent deity. But his god immediately drops the hammer, scolding him intensely. Didn't I specifically order you to stay far away from that cursed tower? The tiny warrior hangs his head in deep shame, softly mumbling that he only wanted the power to protect his family. Heart softened, the main character tries to force an emergency exit, but the massive stone doors refuse to budge an inch. The ruthless system drops a bombshell. Exit denied. The candidate must completely clear the grueling 5th floor. Trapped and utterly terrified, the poor ant begs for guidance. Suddenly, a rare sponsor gift drops from the Seeker of Eternity. Our guy grumbles about this insane rigged difficulty level, as he furiously pops the corks off several glowing potion bottles. Just then, a sharp knock echoes through his real-world apartment. He downs 1 potion himself, transferring the remaining buffs directly into number 1's inventory. Chug these right now, he commands. Meanwhile, waiting outside his front door, a towering guy in sleek glasses drops a heavy question. Are you the legendary hunter? He smoothly introduces himself as Tim, a top-tier elite scout for the prestigious Magnificent Guild. He bows slightly. It is an absolute honor to finally cross paths with you. Our hero frantically waves his hands. Whoa, hold on, I am definitely not an awakened hunter. But Tim just flashes a knowing smirk. You will be very soon. Mind if we have a little chat? While that tense negotiation kicks off in the real world, number 1 marches right back to the base of the death stairs. A pile of empty buff potions litters the floor behind him. Quick heads up, guys. Moving into part 2 of this epic saga, some character names are getting a revamp. The studio totally lost the original translation notes from part 1, so bear with the new naming system. The Seeker of Eternity gazes down with pure admiration at Ilho, acknowledging his walk on the treacherous path of a true warrior, buffed out of his mind. The ant prepares for round 2. The ominous crystal at the summit pulses with sinister light once again. A colossal boulder thunders out of the dark tunnel. Ilho's face darkens into a mask of pure, unyielding resolve. Gravity pulls the monstrous rock down with an earth-shattering roar. But this time, the ant doesn't freeze. He pulls back a glowing fist, unleashing a primal battle cry. Boom! The absolute force of his punch completely obliterates the massive boulder into millions of tiny fragments. The little guy stands there, staring at his own trembling hands in absolute awe of his newfound god-tier strength. The system chimes with a golden victory notification. Candidate Ilho has successfully conquered the boulder trial, issuing divine blessing as a clear reward. Without missing a beat, he steps right into the howling vortex of the wind trial. Back in the human realm, Elon and his sketchy guest, Chen, are sharing drinks. Our guy cautiously asks if that jaw-dropping salary is actually a legitimate 300 million won per year. The corporate scout doesn't blink. If those numbers excite you, we can head straight to guild headquarters right this second and lock down that contract today. He sharply pushes up his slick glasses. Is something holding you back, sir? Elon's mind instantly skyrockets into a glorious fantasy world. The sheer sound of 300 million echoes like a heavenly choir. A massive, greedy grin spreads across his face. Realizing he could finally write his web novels without his tyrannical manager, Breathing down his neck, he pictures mountains of premium Wagyu beef, endless feasts, and literally spoiling his adorable niece rotten with endless luxury gifts. He chuckles softly to himself. But Chen interrupts the daydream, adding that as a signing bonus, he would pocket a staggering 70% cut of all monster drops and dungeon raid rewards. The gears in our hero's head spin at light speed. He could easily funnel all that extra dungeon cash straight into producing his ultimate literary masterpiece. Then massive fame, unlimited wealth, and a gorgeous wife to share it all with. But while Elon is busy building his imaginary empire, Chen glares at him with mounting irritation. "Are you even listening to me?" the scout snaps. Elon snaps out of his daze, blinking in confusion. On pure instinct, he triggers his system skill target evaluation. A chilling shiver instantly rockets down his spine. The glowing red text floating above the scout's head exposes a horrifying truth. Chen is a literal fanatic servant of the god of destruction. Completely oblivious to the reveal, the cultist arrogantly claims that no other major guild would ever offer a rookie such a god-tier contract. Cold sweat drips down Elon's face. He instantly realizes that insane 300 million payout was nothing but a deadly trap. He desperately avoids making eye contact with Chen's predatory stare, forcing the most awkward trembling smile possible. He stammers that his schedule is actually completely booked. Right now. Let's just table this discussion for another time. Yeah. The atmosphere in the room immediately drops below freezing. Chen leans in a lethal edge in his voice. "Are our terms not to your liking?" Paralyzed by sheer terror, Elon stutters out a weak excuse about needing to meet his web novel deadlines. The destructive servant scoffs, dropping all pleasantries. "I might sound blunt, kid, but sign with my master and you will rake in hundreds of times whatever pennies you are making right now." Playing it cool, our hero claimed he was more than just some writer chasing a paycheck. Chen bowed low, offering a stiff apology. But the tension spiked. Chen insisted the guildmaster demanded his presence. Cold sweat started pouring down Elon's face. Backed into a corner, our guy played the oldest trick in the book. He faked a killer stomachache and begged for a bathroom break. Chen violently shoved his glasses up his nose, promising to wait right outside. Safe inside, Elon stared at the mirror, trying to profile this creep. Dread washed over his reflection. It finally clicked. This guy was a fanatic of the destruction god, exactly like that psycho from the hospital. He whipped out his phone, desperate for a lifeline. But out of nowhere, the solid bathroom wall completely exploded. Dust cleared to reveal Chen standing in the rubble, threateningly asking who he planned to call. Elon's blood ran cold, realizing he was absolute dead meat. Chen's scowl deepened, demanding an answer. Panicking, Elon scrambled and spat out a lie, claiming he was just dialing his publisher. He babbled about an urgent deadline while trembling like a leaf inside. But in a flash, a devastating strike sent him flying. He crashed through another wall, gasping for air. Enter Tian, adjusting his tie, totally insulted. They called him in for such a pathetic target. The absolute unit hoisted our hero by the throat, declaring he would drag him out, kicking and screaming. He dangled Elon like a helpless rag doll. Tian shook him mercilessly, laughing at his weakness. Elon's vision started blurring. The brute mockingly told him to stop fighting it. "Just go to sleep," he whispered, promising a painless blackout. Elon's eyes rolled back, his eyelids fluttering shut as his strength faded. Total darkness swallowed him. Then a system alert shattered the silence. Urgent quest triggered, save a dying believer. Elon snapped awake. He had to protect his one and only follower on Earth from getting slaughtered. Tien whistled, shocked. The kid was still conscious. Anyone else would be in a coma by now. Elon desperately clawed at the Titan's grip, but the power gap was just too insane. The grim reality hit him. He was about to get wiped out. But suddenly his eyes burst open, radiating a blinding blue aura. A mystical staircase materialized in his mind. At the peak stood a mysterious shadow commanding him to inherit absolute power. Squinting against the brilliant light, Elon screamed for the supreme deity to keep pushing forward. Skill transfer activated, raw lightning crackled from his pupils as the divine energy violently surged into his mortal vessel. Our hero glanced at his hands, whispering a single word. Skiltion chuckled, intrigued as the scrawny kid suddenly bulked up with shredded muscle. The brute stepped back, dropping into a defensive stance. Elon's aura flared, reinforcing his body. Tian smirked, assuming the kid was just a standard creation-type hunter. Dripping with raw power, Elon struck a legendary pose. Now Tian finally understood why the guildmaster was so obsessed with capturing him. The kid had just unlocked a class-specific skill. The giant ripped off his trench coat, admitting he was actually getting worried. He thought this bounty would be a total snooze fest. Guess he was wrong to envy the squad hunting down the Lightning Empress. He cracked his knuckles, wondering if his crew had already taken her out. But enough distractions, time to crush this kid and deliver him to the boss. Tian hit him with the classic, come-at-me gesture, daring our hero to make the first move. Elon exploded off the ground. Tian barely sidestepped the vicious lunging strike, acknowledging the heavy impact. He weaved through another attack mentally, noting that the rookie's reckless swings left way too many fatal blind spots. Coated in crackling red electricity, the veteran knew this kid was completely green. He threw a pitying counterpunch, expecting an easy knockout. But bam! Elon grabbed the giant's head with both hands and drove a brutal knee straight into his face. Teeth scattered like confetti. Blood erupted from Tian's nose as he shrieked and doubled over. Elon immediately locked his hands together and delivered a devastating hammer blow straight to the spine. Tian's face smashed into the concrete. Pure cinematic justice. Without wasting a second, Elon snatched his dead phone frantically, trying to reach Mary. Desperate, he begged the system interface to track her down. The Nameless Gods follower database initiated an emergency global scan. A holographic map of Earth flared to life in the air. Mary's exact coordinates locked in Elon's eyes glowed with digital blue targeting data, while a battered Tian watched from the floor in pure disbelief. Meanwhile, somewhere else, crimson drops fell from a cold steel blade. A menacing stranger slowly stepped away from Mary's collapsed body. He rested his sword on his shoulder. He mockingly told her to relax, promising the final strike would not hurt. It was the infamous sword demon. Bloody Mary weakly coughed out for her master. The demon raised his blade high. A gruesome splash of red painted the ground. The wind blew a wanted poster of the Lightning Empress into the blood-stained air. Back in reality, the master exhaled a heavy, trembling breath. A horrifying question hammered inside his skull. Could it be possible that some absolute psycho had actually managed to defeat Mary? A violent shiver wrecked his body. This vision was a dark omen of her impending doom. These tragic events had not actually happened yet, but the death demon's prophecy was mere moments away from becoming reality. Fueled by a blazing resolve, Elon made his choice. He would shatter his followers' tragic fate, invoking his divine authority. He narrowed his eyes, zeroing in on the fact that this sword demon was a complete fanatic for blades. He spun around to his laptop. He desperately needed a weapon. He whipped out a cheap little pocket knife. It was his only option. Clutching the phone and the tiny blade, the system chimed. Fate alteration cost magically deducted. A blinding holy light swallowed the hero whole. His current power level had just unlocked an absolute miracle. A radiant sphere ignited inside the apartment as a violent whirlwind tore through the room. Meanwhile, the sword demon glared down at the wounded girl. She clutched her bleeding injuries, demanding to know his objective. The assassin simply scoffed, claiming it was nothing personal. He glanced at his blood-stained blade, insisting he was just doing his job. Suddenly, his gaze snapped away as he leaped backward. A massive, glowing giant materialized right in front of him. The assassin demanded to know this intruder's identity. Elon locked eyes with him, declaring his absolute hunger to slice him apart. Mary trembled on the floor instantly, recognizing her master's overwhelming aura. Towering like a mountain of pure muscle, Elon flexed his massive weapon. He promised to butcher the demon, threatening to carve him into tiny pieces. The demon scowled at this unexpected challenger. He reflected on his brutal journey along the path of the sword, remembering the countless prodigies he had slaughtered. All that bloodshed had forged his current terrifying level. He raised his crimson blade, questioning if this hero was actually allied with the Lightning Empress. He had clashed with monsters leagues above his own strength before, and his flawless technique had buried every single one of them. Elon casually strolled forward, letting out a completely unhinged, hysterical laugh. Pure, unfiltered madness twisted across his face. The sword demon had never faced such an absurd opponent. The guy possessed bulging, crazy eyes and wielded a literal fruit knife. Slowly, the demon sheathed his katana. He dropped into a flawless combat stance. He realized this lunatic hero was completely serious. Purple energy exploded from the demon's lungs as he exhaled. He launched forward, unleashing a devastating horizontal slash. His blade ripped straight through Elon's throat. The demon stared with ice-cold eyes, thinking that not even an S-class awakened could survive his supreme edge. He bragged that he would give a standing ovation if the hero had even managed to dodge. But Elon simply flashed his tiny fruit knife and cackled, shifting into his own fighting stance. There was not a single scratch on his entire body. The assassin stumbled backward in absolute shock. His ultimate strike had just been parried by a kitchen utensil. He retreated toward the injured girl, desperately trying to process this impossible reality. He swung his sword to release a wave of pure energy, mentally screaming at himself to regain his composure. He unleashed another earth-shattering strike, roaring that his blade could slice through solid rock like warm butter. Therefore, blocking it should be physically impossible. A massive wave of dark energy hurled toward the hero. Elon effortlessly swatted the deadly attack away with his little knife, letting out a relaxed breath. A deafening explosion ripped through the air right behind the hero. The panicked swordsman screamed blindly, unleashing a flurry of desperate slashes without understanding where this monster had even come from. Elon brutally crushed every single incoming strike. The terrified sword demon then glanced over at the Lightning Empress, hearing her call this madman her master. The pieces finally clicked together. He concluded this guy had to be a hidden hermit hunter, operating completely outside the official association. Cold sweat drenched his pale face. He convinced himself that this was the only logical reason he had never heard of such a terrifying monster. Everything suddenly made perfect sense in his mind. With trembling hands, he pulled out a mysterious vial he never thought he would actually need to consume. Even though this forbidden liquid would burn away his own life force, it guaranteed a one-hit absolute kill. He chugged the entire thing. Instantly, his eyes blazed with blinding purple light. A suffocating heavy aura swallowed his physical body. He roared to the heavens as a massive pillar of lightning violently erupted from his core. A cursed mark materialized across his face. The demon locked into his ultimate combat stance. He ordered the hero to prepare for his brutal end, offering him the highest honor by officially speaking his true name. Elon just offered a psychotic ear-to-ear grin, happily volunteering to carve the demon into ribbons. The hunter charged forward with an earth-shattering battle cry. The veins pulsing across his face turned pitch black. Elon struck the exact microsecond his enemy stepped into the ultimate kill zone. His tiny knife flawlessly pierced the sword demon's throat, but the assassin shattered the distance, teleporting right behind the hero using a shadow step technique. He lunged at Elon with a vicious downward swing. A deafening roar shook the battlefield. Thick clouds of debris swallowed the area as the sword demon slammed his deadly blade straight into the concrete. He glared through the smoke from beneath his heavy brow. He decided it had been an epic clash, but his victory was absolute. Suddenly, his legendary weapon shattered into a million useless pieces. The devastated man collapsed to his knees, staring at his broken blade. He looked up in pure horror as insane echoing laughter erupted from inside the dust cloud. A terrifying grin pierced the smoke. He drew his blade, whispering one sweet, devastating word. Cut. The assassin's eyes bulged in pure terror. The brute's body was facing the opposite direction, but his head was twisted all the way around, staring a hole straight through his soul. The absolute madman snapped his head back, stumbled forward, and casually slashed at the empty air. The demon scrambled backward in total shock. Suddenly, a blinding blue flash ripped right through his chest. His pupils shrank to pinpricks. He closed his eyes, accepting that his miserable life was finally over. A fraction of a second later, a storm of invisible slashes rained down upon him. It turned out the actual slaughter had taken place right behind his back. The demon frantically checked his own hands, completely unable to comprehend how he was still breathing without a single scratch. He stared up at the human standing before him, begging to know why. Elon just shook his head. The hero could have erased him from existence with zero effort, but chose to grant him absolute mercy instead. Steam literally radiated off Elon's muscles as he claimed that the feeling was absolutely delicious. He flashed his little fruit knife and let out a chilling chuckle. The demon violently shuddered. Elon proudly crowned himself as the one true sword god. The terrified swordsman realized in pure horror that this hero was a literal deity standing at the absolute pinnacle of martial arts. Only a legendary being who had conquered the absolute summit could claim such a divine title. But exactly at that epic moment, the almighty hero suddenly started to shrink. A glowing system window popped up coldly, announcing that his steel body duration had fully expired. The demon's eyes immediately locked onto the pathetic sight. The hero entered a massive state of absolute panic. Every single one of his overpowered stat buffs had just been temporarily locked away. But the traumatized swordsman completely ignored it. He slammed his face directly into the dirt, formally surrendering to the almighty god of the sword. Elon stared in absolute shock. The battlefield was a total wasteland. The swordsman dropped to his knees, begging to follow our hero to reach those exact same god-tier heights. He craved that ultimate blade mastery. The dude practically swore his entire life away to Elon right then and there. But our boy just turned around cringing so hard. He seriously thought this psycho had a few screws loose. Suddenly, the system chimed in with a massive alert. Our hero just bagged his second follower. The sword demon himself was now a total fanatic. Meanwhile, in the background, Mary was gasping for air, drowning in a literal pool of her own blood. The sword demon instantly dashed over, shoving a high-grade healing potion down her throat. Elon barked out, demanding to know what suspicious liquid he was feeding her. But suddenly, a brilliant golden aura wrapped around Mary, knitting her wounds back together. Trembling with pure fear, the demon locked eyes with our hero, frantically apologizing for his trash-tier performance. Elon just froze in his tracks. A blue screen popped up. Quest complete. Mary was safe. Still, he scoffed in pure annoyance at this whole mess of creepy bugs and two massive idiots. Feeling a tiny sting of guilt, he shot a glance at the swordsman. He casually mentioned that the Empress would bounce back soon enough. But then he hit him with the real question. Whose fault was this disaster anyway? The demon absolutely lost his mind, spiraling into total hysterics. He dropped low, practically begging for permission to slice his own stomach open to atone for his sins. Our hero just stood there. He deadpan stared at him, confirming this guy was completely unhinged. Elon just gazed up at the sky, deep in thought. The demon started rambling about finding a brand new blade. He swore to finish the job perfectly this time. Suddenly, the maniac froze solid. Elon locked eyes with him and asked the ultimate question. Would he really obey any command? Without missing a single beat, the swordsman shouted yes. So our hero tested the waters, asking just how cracked his power level actually was. The crazy fanatic smirked, bragging that there weren't even 12 people in this entire nation who could survive his blade. Hearing this flex, Elon dropped a bombshell command. Wipe the Guild of Magnificence off the map in his name. The demon stumbled back, completely terrified. But our hero kept his cool. He smoothly reminded the guy about that absolute loyalty vow he just made. Caught in his own trap, the swordsman swallowed hard, dropping into a dead, nervous silence. Elon towered over him, his aura radiating pure intimidation. Breaking under the pressure, the demon slammed his knees to the dirt, declaring that if the sword god willed it, he would execute the bloodbath with absolute pleasure. A wicked, villainous smirk crept across Elon's face. He was literally just using an enemy hitman to take out the opposing side's trash. Ding! The system flashed red, confirming he had secured absolute fanatic loyalty. The hidden requirements to unlock that insane special privilege were finally met. A glowing holographic notification popped up. The legendary God's multiplier thumb was ready to use, costing exactly 100 coins per activation. The system prompted him to confirm the transaction. Our main character was already drooling, picturing himself doing backflips into an ocean of gold bars and pure cash. He stared down at his own thumb, grinning like a madman, wondering if this broken skill could actually dupe his wealth. It was time for a test run. Cut to the dead of night, where a blinding neon light spilled out of his apartment window. Inside, Elon was tearing his room apart, panting heavily as he ripped drawers open. He was desperately hunting for his secret emergency stash. Grabbing his dusty piggy bank, he violently shook it upside down. Clink. A single pathetic coin dropped out. He raised an eyebrow, totally baffled that he was actually this broke. But then, a massive, greedy grin stretched across his face. He aimed his thumb right at that shiny coin, completely hyped to see this god-tier ability in action. A sharp buzz echoed through the room. Elon instantly froze. Error. The ruthless system casually informed him that the god's multiplier thumb absolutely refused to work on physical objects. Elon's jaw literally dropped to the floor, his eyes bulging out of his skull. His face contorted into pure rage as he chucked the useless coin against the ground. He screamed at the ceiling, demanding to know what kind of sick scam the system was running. For 1 second, he genuinely thought he had secured the ultimate easy mode. Ding, his chat window exploded with a fresh direct message from a user called Silent Nightmare. The message told him to stop crying like a noob and demanded to know where his divine majesty was hiding. This creepy viewer, sporting a genuinely terrifying profile pic, casually suggested our hero go slice somebody up just to blow off some steam. Honestly, Elon smirked, thinking that wasn't a half-bad idea. He was sick and tired of constantly playing defense against these mobs. It was time to go on the offensive. He threw the question to his chat, asking how to grind up his power levels fast. The system chat absolutely blew up with spam. General's Abundance chimed in first, preaching that he needed to grind out some serious positive karma, but Silent Nightmare immediately flamed that idea. They said the hero route was way too slow. It was time to crash out and start a literal bloodbath. Like an absolute full-scale massacre to farm massive experience points. Then the legendary user, 1,000 Blades, cutting through space itself, backed up the psycho plan. They pointed out that a killing spree would easily let him evolve into a brand new, overpowered blade. Elon rubbed his chin, going into deep thinker mode. He glanced away from the floating screens, weighing his crazy options. Slowly, a chaotic smirk formed on his lips as he clenched his fist tight. His mind was made up. His eyes flashed with crazy ambition as he declared his ultimate strategy. Why choose? He was going to do both. A fresh system window popped, welcoming our protagonist to the Twisted God Creator menu. The creepy digital mascot flashed a mouth full of razor-sharp teeth. Its massive single eye stared straight into his soul. The interface dropped a heavy lore bomb. Based on his next moves, he would evolve into either a holy deity or an absolute demon god. Elon chilled on the edge of his bed, finalizing his game plan. Before diving into the chaos, he needed to abuse that god's multiplier thumb one more time. It was time to multiply his absolute army of ants. Channeling the glitch, Elon slammed his thumb down onto his glowing phone screen, activating the overpowered hack. Issuing the absolute command to strike the system, interface flashed. Acting on their divine ruler's will, the entire Ant Clan Legion marched out. Their target, the massive Imperial army. Estimated time of arrival, 24 hours. Our main character flashed a wicked grin as blinding currents of power surged right out of his phone screen. He chuckled darkly, ordering them to grind the enemy into absolute dust. Shifting his gaze to the game world, he spotted the little ant girl. The holy maiden suddenly channeled the divine skill, God's healing ring finger. A warm light washed over the tiny ant, completely erasing the injury on her hand. Elon watched in pure awe, realizing his priestess could literally spam his divine abilities. The little girl beamed with pure joy, cheering that the pain was completely gone. Rising gracefully from her seat, the holy maiden took center stage. She gazed up at the heavens. Pressing one hand over her heart and raising the other, she preached to the massive crowd, urging them to put their absolute faith in their deity. She promised that under his divine protection, a glorious new destiny awaited them. Hyped beyond belief, the ant citizens began chanting in perfect sync. Their prayers echoed like thunder. The system chimed in, revealing that his good karma points were skyrocketing as his fan base multiplied. Elon just scratched his cheek awkwardly. These guys were literal die-hard fanatics, and honestly, the hype felt a little bit overkill. Staring at his screen, he realized he had hit the jackpot. Thanks to his ultimate hype woman, he could literally away from keyboard farm karma points without lifting a finger. Suddenly, his eyes bulged out. His boss was calling, panicking slightly. Elon cleared his throat and hit accept, dropping his most polite customer service voice. Pacing around the room, our guy desperately tried to explain that he needed some emergency time off for personal reasons. The manager absolutely lost it, screaming through the speaker that he literally just got back from vacation and was already begging for another break. Winced by the ear-piercing yelling, Elon held the phone away. A crazy idea suddenly sparked in his mind. What if he hit himself with the God's multiplier thumb? Could he literally spawn a shadow clone? With absolutely nothing left to lose, he decided to risk it all and test the theory. Reaching out, he activated the divine multiplier skill. He slammed his glowing thumb right onto his own forehead. A blinding flash erupted on impact. Violent waves of crimson energy swallowed him whole. Squinting through the chaotic aura, he slowly looked up. Standing right there was a dark-haired clone glaring back at him with pure, unfiltered disgust. The system immediately flashed, confirming the divine multiplication was a success. The timer started ticking down. He had exactly 6,666 seconds before the skill expired. Hyped beyond belief, Elon pointed right at his doppelganger, cheering that the glitch actually worked. He immediately started bossing the clone around, ordering him to babysit the in-game soldiers, while the real Elon focused on writing new chapters. But the clone just stared at him with lethal intent. Without hesitation, the clone threw a savage right hook, clocking the original Elon straight in the jaw. Stunned, our guy hit the floor. The clone snapped at him to shut up, and proceeded to ruthlessly beat his own creator, telling him to stop acting like a total clown. Dusting his hands off, the clone smirked, claiming that felt incredibly refreshing. The original Elon was now slumped against the bed, completely defeated and rethinking his life choices. Meanwhile, angry yelling still leaked from the dropped phone. The manager was screaming his lungs out, demanding to know what the background noise was, and swearing he wouldn't fall for any stupid pranks. With zero hesitation, the clone snatched the phone, telling the toxic boss to back the heck off. Before the manager could even breathe a word, the clone brutally slammed the end call button. Channeling terrifying levels of power, he pressed a hand to his own face. The ultimate skill, Cruel Massacre, was triggered, his features twisted into a menacing horned demon. Flashing a sinister smirk, he whispered that playtime was over. A beam of raw destructive energy blasted straight into the phone screen. Inside the game, a colossal green beast pulverized the earth with a single strike, shattering the battlefield to pieces. Backed by two other nightmarish titans, the monster squad charged dead ahead toward the Ant Legion. The local commander sweat dropped in absolute terror. These enemy units were way too overpowered. Numbers meant literally nothing. Their massive army was about to get steamrolled. The Green Titan's crimson eyes flared as it roared with maniacal laughter, mocking their pathetic defense. Suddenly, the entire battlefield froze as a blinding heavenly light ripped through the sky. Violent streams of blood-red aura crashed down, completely wrapping the enemy titans in a death grip. The terrified commander looked up in pure awe. The system chimed with a god-tier notification. Thanks to an absolute massacre streak, the Cruel Massacre skill just leveled up to rank C. A purple monster's eyes blew wide open in horror, trembling as he realized they had just provoked the mythical evil god. Cut to the enemy base, where Lady Ara shattered her desk with a furious punch, demanding answers. A surviving beast groveled before her, begging for mercy, as he clutched his brutally severed limb. Pressing his face against the cold floor, he delivered the crushing reality: the entire strike force they just deployed, completely and utterly wiped off the map. Lady Ara bolted up from her throne, her face twisting in pure rage. She demanded to know if this catastrophic loss was really the work of one single evil god. It sounded like pure delusion to her. Reaching out with his final breath, the dying beast warned her to never cross this deity, because this wasn't a god they were fighting, it was a straight-up demon. With those final chilling words, the monster's physical body crumbled away, scattering into absolute dust on the wind. A red-suited minion watched the scene in pure terror, realizing this entity's power even erased their corpses from existence. Sweating bullets, Lady Ara locked eyes with her top lieutenant. This wasn't a normal war anymore. They needed to warn His Majesty immediately. The situation was incredibly urgent, especially since the Emperor had locked himself away in absolute seclusion. The unknown hero chilled just around the corner, arms crossed confidently over his chest. Lady Ara's face twisted into a deep scowl as she folded her arms, barking orders to immediately summon the remaining 10 swords and the great general. Her terrified subordinate pointed out a massive flaw, warning that such a reckless move would leave them wide open to brutal demon beast attacks from neighboring territories. but the girl totally snapped, screaming that the black flame was their absolute top priority right now. They desperately needed to claim the evil god's head before his majesty finally returned. The unknown hero simply arched an eyebrow and casually looked away. Deep down, he threw a mental apology to Lady Ara for dipping out without a proper goodbye. Meanwhile, our main character was slumped on the floor, head hanging low. His face was absolutely wrecked with fresh, painful bruises. The boy's head snapped up in pure confusion, wondering what on earth just went down. He scowled hard as the humiliating memory hit him, realizing he had just caught an epic beatdown from his very own clone. Elon fiercely gritted his teeth. He muttered that he never expected to be this ridiculously lonely in the entire universe, to the pathetic point where his own exact copy was throwing hands at him. Suddenly, a massive pink heart popped up on his glowing system window. The constellation Generous Abundance eagerly asked where the ridiculously handsome clone ran off to, practically begging for a meet and greet. Our protagonist just stared blankly at his glowing phone screen. Elon's brow violently twitched when he spotted 21 missed calls. He was completely clueless about who was trying to reach him, especially since he definitely wasn't expecting anyone to care. Then, the horrifying realization hit him. His inbox was flooded with unread messages. The protagonist's eyes nearly bugged out of his skull. His manager had spammed him brutally, announcing that his contract was entirely shredded, and he was officially cancelled. Right on cue, the system happily chimed in, announcing that the Holy Maiden was successfully reclassified as a missionary for the Ant Kingdom. Enemy prisoners from the Grass Kingdom had been completely secured, and several key stats skyrocketed across the board. Mountains of light and dark coins poured into his inventory, followed by a satisfying level-up notification. But Elon just threw his hands up in absolute despair, screaming about how none of this virtual success even mattered. The system casually ignored his breakdown, stating that, thanks to the Ant Kingdom nomads' aggressive expansion, the Believer's holy territory had vastly expanded by exactly 131.50. The protagonist's jaw literally dropped to the floor as he screamed at the top of his lungs. Why should he give a single thought to this stupid game right now? Even though his virtual empire was absolutely thriving, the hero could only picture his furious red-eyed manager threatening to sue him into oblivion, demanding massive financial compensation for breach of contract. Panic mode activated. The boy's fingers flew across his keyboard like absolute lightning, desperately muttering that he needed to code this insanely fast and deploy a brand new building just to save one single believer. A glowing system alert flashed warning that a fanatically devout follower was in critical danger and desperately needed saving. The boy's eyes widened in pure shock as a massive holographic window completely blocked his view, directly asking if he wanted to save his fanatically loyal believer. The exclusive Sword Demon questline popped up, promising that saving this crazed fanatic would force the hero's hidden talents to violently bloom like a rare flower. Elon threw his head back and screamed at the ceiling, crying out that he seriously needed to focus on his real-life job. The protagonist aggressively rubbed his temples, desperately trying to mentally block out this annoying follower. But when he glanced up, shimmering streams of intense energy spiraled through the air. A blindingly bright electric blue pillar of light erupted right in front of him. The boy threw his arms up to shield his eyes, yelling into the void to ask what this crazy phenomenon was. The system kindly offered a sneak peek into the believer's twisted mind, forcefully initiating a first-person mental link straight from the Sword Demon's point of view. The hero desperately yelled that he absolutely did not care. Elon's eyes stretched wide with terror as a deep frown took over his face. Swirling, glitchy pixels materialized all around him. Suddenly, he saw the Sword Demon heavily chained up right beside him. A menacing girl stood over the captive tauntingly, calling him extremely stubborn. She closed the distance with a dangerous smirk, asking if he finally had some actual words to share. This was Tommy from the legendary Magnificent Guild. She was heavily backed by the god of destruction, fully capable of summoning absolutely devastating high-tier flames. She violently yanked his head back by his hair, coldly whispering that if he even breathed a word, she would slaughter him without a single ounce of mercy. Yet the fiercely loyal Sword Demon kept his mouth tightly shut. Standing in the shadows like an invisible ghost, the protagonist watched this whole nightmare unfold, completely clueless about how things got this intensely bad. The sheer killing intent in the room was absolutely suffocating. Elon nervously furrowed his brow, piecing together that this elite guild had obviously ambushed and captured the Sword Demon, right when he made a reckless move against Tommy. Utterly unimpressed, Tommy delivered a stinging backhand to the boy's face, loudly complaining that playing with him was getting incredibly boring. Looming menacingly behind her was an absolute mountain of a man. The protagonist stared in pure, unadulterated fear at this battle-scarred powerhouse. Shiyu glared down with a terrifying scowl, his face covered in brutal, jagged scars. He was a core heavyweight of the Magnificent Guild, also blessed by the fearsome god of destruction, and packed an insanely monstrous amount of raw physical muscle. Defeated and bound, the Sword Demon simply let his head drop, The terrifying heroes casually stepped aside. Right then, the system pinged, announcing that the hero's absolute special authority had successfully hacked straight into the deepest layers of the believer's consciousness. Ilan's jaw completely unhinged, his eyes practically popping out in pure disbelief at the revelation. It turned out the boy was sold off to a brutal underground dark syndicate as a mere infant, ruthlessly raised from the shadows as a cold-blooded assassin the second his legendary Tai Chi skills awakened. He had spent his whole life executing high-stakes assassination hits. And through that blood-soaked underworld, he crossed paths with the lethal duo, Tommy and Shu, of the Magnificent Guild. Shockingly, they shared the exact same tragic, messed-up origin story as him. Suddenly, an icy voice completely shattered the silence, irritably, asking if this annoying disrespect was seriously happening again. The captive boy raised a battered eyebrow in total surprise, slowly turning his head toward the sound. Tommy mirrored his expression, crossing her arms and demanding to know if they were actually being totally ignored, right to their faces. The hero was basically begging for a real fight. Naturally, those punks became instant enemies. The sword demon brushed right past them, throwing out a totally cold smirk. "If you are feeling jealous, then grind harder," he mocked. Our boy lived and breathed the way of the blade, desperate to level up his combat power. But his absolute mastery over the sword actually unlocked true martial enlightenment. The sword demon's eyes nearly popped completely out of his skull. He stared in pure, unadulterated shock as our protagonist wildly flailed his arms around. Ilan locked his jaw tightly, gripping a deadly combat knife right against his chest. The hero had finally hit his ultimate milestone. The sword demon panicked, wondering if his epic legend would really end in this pathetic way. A heavy wave of total humiliation crushed his warrior pride. Tommy stalked over to the chained-up kid, demanding to know who dared order a hit on the splendid guild. "How could you backstab us like that?" The older thug aggressively massaged his stiff shoulder, grumbling about wasting time with all this annoying chit-chat. "A filthy rat deserves the grave. Let us just execute him and get this over with." The female assassin whipped her head around in pure disbelief. "Are you totally crazy? Apostle John is paying millions for a live bounty." Since the apostle desperately needed a living sacrifice, the massive dude ground his teeth in pure frustration. He slammed his heavy fist right into his open palm, snarling that if she got in his way, he would gladly send her to the afterlife too. Tommy casually raised his eyebrows, making it crystal clear that a bloodbath was not her vibe. She just hated leaving all that cash on the table. Suddenly, Shildo aggressively yanked the sword demon straight by his hair. The beaten kid tightly squeezed his eyes shut, sending up a desperate silent apology to the sword god. The hulking brute cocked his fist back for a lethal strike, promising to drag out the hero's agonizing suffering. Watching closely from the shadows, our main character knew this situation was straight-up critical. Suddenly, a bright holographic window flashed, announcing that the emergency transfer to his critically endangered believer was officially online. Ilan furrowed his brow, realizing it was time to step up. Instantly, raw, explosive power surged through the hero's veins. He directly synced with his loyal follower Ilho, downloading the legendary steel body skill. She bared his teeth like a wild beast, charging up his deadly strike. But a massive surge of aura snatched the sword demon away, shattering his heavy iron chains a split second before impact. The huge guy dropped his jaw, roaring to know who dared interfere. Our protagonist smoothly set the battered sword demon onto the dirt. Ilan gnashed his teeth and aggressively clapped his hands, scoffing that the rescue mission was totally pointless now. He was way too hyped for violence to back down. The kid just flashed an arrogant, icy smirk. Crackling, blinding arcs of blue lightning instantly erupted around his aura. The hero's mind suddenly raced with a crazy, chaotic idea. What if he stacked Samir's epic lightning storm right on top of Ilho's impenetrable steel body armor? Without hesitating, he triggered the devastating skill transfer, pulling Samir's raging thunderstorm into reality. Our protagonist aggressively knitted his brows together, before his lips curled into a totally psychotic grin. He was absolutely ready to one-shot these absolute clowns. But suddenly his eyes shot wide open in pure panic. As a massive red system warning blocked his vision, the glaring screen screamed about an absolute skill limit. He was strictly locked out of equipping a second high-tier ability from his followers, while his divine energy level was this trashed. Because he forced a magical overload, the system violently triggered an emergency hard reset. The main character let out an agonizing scream as volatile, uncontrolled lightning ripped through his nervous system. Xiao scowled, his eyes bulging completely out of his head. Furious that this punk was seemingly disrespecting him, he violently pivoted, launching a devastating roundhouse kick. The heavy strike slammed ruthlessly right into our hero's exposed neck. The protagonist's eyes rolled straight back as he hacked violently, but the older thug barely had a single second to act confused. A terrifying backlash of raw, blinding electricity exploded outward. The massive dude shrieked in absolute agony, crashing face first into the dirt, completely paralyzed. A crisp system ding confirmed our hero had tanked that lethal blow purely thanks to the indestructible steel body buff. The kid dropped to one knee beside Xi's smoking unconscious form. He was sweating bullets, realizing he almost hit the game over screen. The female assassin desperately shrieked her partner's name, sprinting over and frantically shaking his limp shoulders. She violently begged him to snap out of the shock. Our protagonist just coldly watched the pathetic scene unfold, internally celebrating that he had miraculously neutralized one heavy hitter. Xiao Mei's face twisted into an expression of pure, unadulterated rage. She aggressively ground her teeth together, screaming at him for daring to trash her teammate. She sucked in a massive, terrifying lungful of oxygen, bending her flexible body forward like a loaded spring. She unleashed a devastating blinding inferno straight at our hero. The kid instinctively threw his arm up over his face, desperately bracing for the blazing impact. Elon braced his jaw, preparing for total incineration, wondering if this fiery hell was going to be his final resting place. But the beautiful system ping loudly chimed in. He had perfectly tanked the raging firestorm, all thanks to the overpowered armor of the steel body. Our protagonist raised an eyebrow in total confusion. What on earth was this bizarre tingling feeling washing over him? Instead of burning flesh, it felt insanely cozy and warm. It honestly felt exactly like chilling in a luxury hot spring, complete with a tiny rolled-up towel resting on his head. The kid happily shut his eyes, fully soaking in the immaculate vibes. He was literally daydreaming about a relaxing spa day, wearing the biggest, goofiest smile right in the middle of a deathmatch. Tommy dropped her head, gasping for air after that massive attack. She glared through the fading smoke, absolutely livid that he had tanked her best shot. She screeched in absolute furious disgust, demanding to know how a scrub like him survived that inferno. The hero just flashed a cocky smirk smoothly, flexing his aura-infused muscles. Even he had not realized this defensive skill was this utterly broken, translucent, glowing energy shields hovered defensively around his entire form, giving her his most arrogant main character grin. He bragged that saving that follower was paying off massively. The fire user glared at him like he was absolute trash. She aggressively brought her hand back up to her mouth, violently erupting another massive pillar of scorching flames. "I am going to reduce you to nothing but ash," she roared. Our boy just casually raised an eyebrow at the incoming heat, letting out a dramatically bored sigh as he extended one hand. The fiery attacker's eyes widened in sheer frozen panic. In a flash, Ilan ruthlessly palm-struck the back of her neck. Right on cue, the system mercilessly announced a timeout. The invincible steel body buff instantly returned to its original owner. The kid practically shrieked, staring wide-eyed at his normal squishy hands. His heart hammered, realizing that if his armor glitched even a second earlier, he would have been roasted into a literal pile of dust. Meanwhile, his brutally knocked out opponent crumpled totally lifeless into the dirt. A crisp chime echoed in his head. The system confirmed it. The mission to save the fanatical believer was an absolute success. The ultimate reward, a complete awakening of his hidden talent. A smug smirk crept across Elon's face as he stroked his chin. His imagination ran wild. If his writing talent finally bloomed, it would be absolutely legendary. He stood frozen in pure anticipation, grinning like an absolute idiot. The sword demon stared at him utterly bewildered. Suddenly, the boy's expression darkened. He scowled, demanding to know where his so-called promised reward was. His shoulders slumped in total defeat. He muttered miserably, wondering what actually awakened. The hero glanced back at Elon, who was lost in his own thoughts. Seriously, what was he even expecting? The sword demon's eyes widened in sheer awe, while Elon just flashed a confident smile. He hyped up the protagonist's battle style, calling his flawless victory over those enemies straight up incredible. He had never witnessed such god-tier combat. Elon practically ground his teeth into dust. He mentally begged the guy to stop looking at him with those sparkling eyes. Meanwhile, the hero scanned their surroundings, trying to figure out where the heck they even were. He desperately needed to get back home and finish his daily grinding. Suddenly, an eerie noise pierced the silence. They whipped around instantly. A chilling voice echoed from the shadows, praising Elon for being exactly as magnificent as rumored. Thick rivers of pitch-black smoke twisted into the air right in front of them. A mysterious guy stepped forward, slowly clapping his hands with a twisted grin, bragging about how thrilled he was to finally see them. The sword demon's face hardened into a fierce scowl. He instantly warned the sword god to stay on high alert. Our main character just raised an eyebrow. The notorious Apostle Juan flashed a wicked smile. He reached out a hand, whispering that their fateful meeting had finally arrived. This was the mastermind, the architect behind every single disaster, the very monster executing the dark sacrifice rituals for the god of destruction. Elon stopped dead in his tracks. He literally mentally facepalmed, groaning internally. Great. Just another absolute psycho to deal with. The sword demon watched with wide, cautious eyes. Juan bowed dramatically, arching his back like a theatrical villain, declaring it an absolute honor to finally cross paths with the protagonist. The fanatic's eyes practically bulged out of his skull. He threw his hands toward the sky, letting out a blood-curdling scream. The hero froze, totally caught off guard. The sword demon tried to snap him out of it, but got zero reaction. Honestly, he decided this so-called hero was the real certified lunatic here. Elon cocked an eyebrow. Finding the notorious Count of Sacrifices right here was a massive shock. He immediately dropped into a low combat stance, locking eyes with the Apostle. His system panel was glitching out. The stats were completely hidden behind a wall of question marks. He definitely needed to play this super carefully. Juan's creepy smile deepened as he pressed a hand to his own heart. He actually had the nerve to call him brother. Our main character's brain practically blue-screened at the sheer audacity. He snapped an order for the freak to back the heck up, but Juan just threw his arms wide open, claiming the adrenaline rushing through his veins had him literally shaking with excitement. All because he was finally standing before his supposed destiny. The protagonist blinked in pure confusion. Juan just raised his eyebrows, soaking in the dramatic tension. Without warning, a hand slammed firmly against Juan's chest. Elon's eyes widened in shock as he realized who just stepped up. It was the sword demon. The fierce warrior glared daggers at the Apostle. He barked a lethal warning, forbidding him from taking even one step closer to his god. Juan hissed, his polite facade instantly crumbling into pure disgust. With a blinding flash of motion, he backhanded the warrior, calling him nothing but a pathetic insect. Then, with terrifying strength, the Apostle hoisted the sword demon right off the ground. Dread instantly washed over the protagonist's face. Juan casually tossed the sword demon aside like a rag doll. His body rocketed through the air, leaving a streak of kinetic energy in his wake. Elon was absolutely paralyzed by the shock. His mind could not even process what just happened. How the heck was the legendary sword demon defeated that easily? This was the same powerhouse who effortlessly crushed the Lightning Empress, and he just got swatted away with a single kick. Juan smirked down at them, demanding to know who the protagonist really was. Stalking closer, the lunatic pointed a threatening finger. He demanded to know exactly which divine being the hero worshipped. The hero's brow furrowed into a deep, intense glare. He muttered a dark response under his breath. The Apostle leaned in, arrogantly, daring him to say it to his face. Elon's jaw clenched, his patience completely evaporating. He raised a clenched fist, his aura flaring to life. Looking the monster dead in the eye, he declared he served only his own god. The Apostle's eyes blew wide open in sheer disbelief. System alert, skill transfer initiated. The hero unleashed the devastating lightning storm. Elon thrust his hand forward, carving a blinding trail of crackling plasma straight through the air. Explosive tendrils of pure electricity engulfed his fist. Juan's arrogant smirk instantly vanished into a look of absolute terror. As that glowing fist of destruction plummeted straight toward his chest, meanwhile, a mysterious entity with majestic butterfly wings headed straight for the exit. The hero sent out a silent mental apology to Ara's sacred law, feeling guilty for ghosting them without a proper goodbye. Spreading those dazzling wings, the figure soared directly toward the glowing full moon. A ruthless new plan formed, bringing back the evil god's decapitated head, along with the shattered souls of every single one of his followers, and he was going to do it with his own two hands. The winged hero sliced through the night sky, determination burning in his eyes. The logic was simple, but deadly. Cut off the believers, and you starve the deity of its divine power. Deep within a heavily fortified perimeter, surrounded by a massive ancient forest, a rugged man hauled heavy timber on his back. He strictly warned the local kids not to wander into the dangerous shadows of the woods. A group of tiny ant hybrids were playing in the dirt. They obediently bobbed their little heads, promising to listen. Suddenly, a shadow cast over the village. The man tilted his head upwards, squinting against the glare. What on earth was hovering up there? The Ant-Man's eyes widened in absolute horror, screaming that it was impossible. High above the butterfly-winged nightmare hovered in place. Swirling vortexes of lethal glowing energy rapidly charged up in both its palms. The winged hunter smirked, realizing he finally struck gold. This was the hidden settlement of the notorious Black Tribe. A sinister glow illuminated his wide, unblinking eyes. System Command Toxic Wave activated. Arching its back in a terrifying display of power, the creature unleashed the attack. Blinding emerald-green shockwaves of pure venom erupted violently from its core. His ultimate goal, to brutally exterminate the entire Black Tribe until nothing remained. Down below, the innocent ant hybrids instantly collapsed to their knees, violently coughing and clawing at their burning throats. The monstrous entity hovered in the sky, watching the chaos unfold. Our main character genuinely believed he had finally shattered the evil god's defenses. Gritting his teeth, Elon delivered a devastating right hook straight to John's jaw. A blinding trail of pure aura lingered in the air from the sheer force of the impact. The Apostle's eyes rolled back as the shockwave sent him flying like a rag doll, crashing brutally into the earth. His lungs burning, our boy dropped his trembling fists and gasped for air. Wiping the sweat from his face, the hero cracked a confident smirk. Karma never missed, and this epic beatdown was long overdue. But the celebration ended instantly. Sinister currents of energy swirled around the apostle's boots as John violently arched his spine, forcing his broken body back up. Shock widened the protagonist's eyes, a frustrated scream tearing from his throat. The absolute menace of an apostle stood tall, throwing his arms wide open as if mocking him. Lethal waves of glowing power pulsed around the villain's silhouette. Stepping into a defensive stance, Elon warned the psycho to just give up and accept defeat. Suddenly, John collapsed back into the dirt, kicking up massive clouds of debris. Taking a desperate breather, the protagonist leaned heavily on his knees, completely drained. Yet the apostle's fingers dug fiercely into the gravel, fighting gravity once more. Watching this nightmare unfold, Elon realized the Lightning Empress's ultimate skill was totally useless against this freak. Hauling his battered torso forward, John managed to stand again. A chilling thought crossed the hero's mind. Was this dude actually immortal? Tilting his head with a psychopathic grin, John bragged that all this effort was absolutely pointless. No matter what overpowered moves the hero spammed, he would simply resurrect from the dead. Elon bit his lip hard, a wave of pure dread washing over him. His cooldowns were maxed out, and his arsenal of heavy-hitting attacks was completely empty. He froze like a statue, staring helplessly at the monstrous apostle. Seeing his opponent's despair, John raised an eyebrow and flashed a wicked smile. It finally clicked for the hero. No matter what divine skills he unleashed, the apostle would always bounce back without a scratch. Every single time, the boy scowled in frustration, terrified of meeting a gruesome end. Right here, John would tauntingly ask if that was his brother's absolute limit. Feigning boredom, the apostle dramatically sighed, begging for at least a little bit of entertainment. Tension knotted Elon's forehead as he clenched his jaw. This situation was rapidly turning into a total disaster. His brain raced for a desperate exit strategy. Panic widened his eyes to the absolute limit before a crazy idea struck him. He had literally zero options left but one. Jamming his thumb intensely against his forehead, the protagonist triggered the legendary multiplier skill known as a god's thumb. A blinding flash of holy light erupted from his skin, and a profoundly annoyed clone manifested right out of thin air. Glancing at his own copy, the boy sweated bullets, praying this alter ego would not randomly beat him up mid-battle again. Stealing his nerves, the hero tightened his grip into a desperate fist. Meanwhile, John just chuckled, deeply amused that his enemy casually walked around with a literal split personality. Beyond just being a stubborn roach, this kid was incredibly full of surprises. However, the newly summoned clone just glared with absolute disgust, slowly turning its piercing gaze toward the original host. Shaking in his boots, Elon immediately threw his hands up defensively, in full surrender mode. Deeply traumatized because the last time he tried bossing this clone around, it literally obliterated him, so playing it safe was his best survival tactic right now. Releasing a heavy, exhausted sigh, the clone muttered that they were completely screwed. Desperate for a lifeline, the boy reached out, pleading with his own copy to just lend him a hand for once. Turning toward the sassy doppelganger, the hero explained that the stakes were life or death because the entire Gamma tribe was on the verge of getting wiped out. The clone coldly interrupted, asking if the protagonist was seriously clueless about the basic fact that losing followers severely nerfed their divine power. A massive gasp of realization escaped the boy's lips. Feeling left out, John scowled intensely as lethal dark aura flared violently around him. He demanded to know if these two clowns were seriously ignoring a boss-level threat right now. Without warning, the apostle shoved his palm forward, unleashing a catastrophic tornado of pure blinding energy straight at them. Instantly, the protagonist threw up a frantic barrier. Moving with lightning speed, the clone smoothly sidestepped the lethal blast. Elon, however, caught the full brunt of the shockwave, getting brutally slammed into the dirt. Coughing up dust, the kid furiously scrambled back to his feet, screaming about the pointlessness of possessing god-tier power if he was just going to die anyway. The clone merely arched a judgmental eyebrow at his pathetic original self. Letting out a deeply frustrated sigh, the copy gave a cryptic order to just burn that useless piece of trash to ashes. Dusting himself off, Elon yelled in confusion, but the clone had already vanished, diving straight into the smartphone. Wrapped in a dazzling stream of digital magic, the protagonist's jaw practically hit the floor at that wild exit. Smug as ever, the apostle demanded to know if the kid was finally done, spamming his pathetic little circus tricks. Trembling from head to toe, Elon furrowed his brows, hit with the sickening realization that his own clone had literally rage-quit the server. But wait, a sudden spark of inspiration hit the boy as he recalled the exact way that brilliant aura had wrapped around his hand earlier. Thinking he had finally cracked the ultimate cheat code, Elon aggressively flipped the bird right in John's face. A massive, triumphant grin spread across the boy's face as he stared at his hand, fully believing he was about to unleash his own devastating secret art on the villain. With absolute confidence, the main character activated the legendary skill. The condemning middle finger of a god, a blinding holy light engulfed his hand. The villain's eyes went wide in genuine shock as Elon let out an epic battle cry and dramatically swiped his hand forward. A massive wave of hellfire was supposed to incinerate the apostle, but instead, a pathetic tiny little flame just pitifully flickered at the tip of his finger. His epic game face instantly crumbled as he remembered this skill literally just acted like a cheap convenience store lighter. Even the psychotic villain cringed with secondhand embarrassment, deadpan asking if this ridiculous comedy routine was finally over. Sinister shockwaves of pitch-black aura began violently swirling around the apostle's threatening figure. Holding up his ridiculously tiny flaming finger, the boy desperately racked his brain for a way out of this absolute nightmare. In a flash of panic, our young author curled his fingers and rapidly combined it with the god's multiplier thumb. He aggressively snapped his fingers, sending a barrage of miniature harmless fireballs aggressively floating through the air. John just stared, raising a baffled eyebrow at the sheer audacity. The tiny sparks gently booped against him and fizzled out without doing a single point of damage, making the whole situation 10 times more awkward. "Playtime is officially over," the man growled. His time limit was rapidly ticking down to 0. The apostle shut his eyes as crackling clusters of pure violent purple energy erupted from his palms. This was it, the absolute end. Abandoned by everyone, even his own alter ego, the player's face twisted in raw, unfiltered terror. Desperation, choking his voice, our main character begged for a miracle, wondering why he was still breathing. Suddenly, a heavy gasp echoed. The villain clutched his ribs, staring down at a massive gaping wound. John's mind raced in a panic. Why the hell was his broken regeneration glitching? His body was supposed to be completely untouchable. Ding, the system chimed in. The relentless hellfire was actually devouring the enemy's life force. Elon blinked in utter shock. A little heads up about this overpowered hidden stat would have been nice. The man slowly raised his hand. Our boy's eyes snapped wide open, flashing with an intense, electrified glare. The apostle's brain short-circuited. It was absolute madness. How could some trash-tier skill completely cancel out his divine healing? His jaw hit the floor. Before he could even process the shock, a crushing tidal wave of dark aura slammed him straight to his knees. Agony ripped through his veins, forcing his eyes shut as he ground his teeth together. Looking down at him, the villain's gaze dripped with absolute disgust. Fluttering its massive wings, the giant moth locked onto a new mission. It was time to hunt the Black Tribe into extinction and cripple that evil god once and for all. A toxic, suffocating smog swallowed the entire clearing. The ant army began choking on the poison. Glaring down at the dying swarm, the beast roared that their god was the one to blame for this massacre. But suddenly, a spine-chilling presence shifted the air. A deadly premonition struck the monster, forcing it to snap its head around. A lone figure was tearing through the sky straight toward it. As the distance closed, the moth recognized the incoming threat. It was him, the evil deity of the Black Tribe. Shifting into a lethal battle stance, the insect swore it would vaporize every last drop of his power. In response, our main character's clone just locked eyes with the beast and aimed a devastating punch. The monster's eyes bulged in pure panic. Boom! The doppelganger's fist connected with god-tier force. Instantly, the beast was erased into nothing but a pathetic puff of smoke. Staring at the sea of lifeless ants scattered across the dirt, our hero's heart sank. Were his loyal followers actually wiped out? Collapsed on the battlefield, the writer gasped in agony. It felt like every single bone in his body had been pulverized to dust. Ding! The system warned that his follower count was plummeting, threatening to nerf his divine powers into oblivion. Grinding his teeth through the pain, the player mentally cursed at the game. Could it seriously stop spamming him with these annoying pop-ups? Then the real kicker dropped. The system prompted, "Did the user want to burn 5 million coins to revive his fallen believers?" His eyebrows shot up in a moment of pure genius. Wait a second. Could he actually use the god's healing ring finger on his own broken body? A wicked smirk spread across Elon's face. This was an absolute game changer. It would practically make him immortal. Slapping his hand against his forehead, he instantly activated the healing skill. John flinched in absolute awe as dazzling waves of life-giving green energy burst to life right in front of his eyes. But then, reality checked him. The prompt stated that self-healing cost a whopping 10 coins. Throwing his hands up in pure outrage, our boy raged at the ridiculous price tag. Especially since the system only taxed 1 measly coin per follower. Dropping into a focused lotus position, he slammed that confirm button to resurrect his loyal army. Jackpot! The system chimed, rewarding him with a massive 5 million coin payout for his life-saving heroic deed. Clasping his hands in pure joy, the writer finally believed that good karma was 100% real. Raising a confused hand, the man squinted through the chaos, demanding to know what the hell was actually going on. Channeling a vortex of destructive energy in his palm, the apostle practically screamed, "How was this pest still standing?" Without hesitation, he launched the dark aura straight at our player. His expression turned ice cold. Skill-activated body of steel. A glowing, impenetrable force field erupted out of thin air, completely blocking the villain's deadly assault. Flipping his enemy a disrespectful middle finger, our main character confidently declared that it was finally his time to dominate the battlefield. Triggering the god's condemning middle finger, Elon unleashed a roaring tsunami of hellfire. But John's reflexes kicked in, violently throwing himself to the side to dodge the lethal blaze. Sticking the landing, the man shut his eyes and let out a dark chuckle. This opponent was definitely worthy of being a high-tier sacrifice. But gripping the swirling flames in his hand, our boy aggressively told him to shut his mouth. A wicked grin stretched across the apostle's face. He proudly announced that 999 sacrifices were already primed and ready for the slaughter. Our hero cocked a confused eyebrow, pointing a finger straight at the madman. The villain eagerly revealed that his enemy's soul would be the ultimate cherry on top, the final offering to satisfy his twisted god's hunger. The pieces finally clicked. The writer's face darkened as he realized the horrifying truth. This entire setup was just a ritual to summon the literal god of destruction. The sword demon was nothing but a pathetic decoy the whole time. Raising his arms to the sky, the villain erupted into manic laughter, thanking our hero for volunteering as the ultimate final victim. Suddenly, the sky itself ripped open, bleeding an ominous crimson glow. A colossal, terrifying yellow eye locked onto our heroes. Shaking with pure, unfiltered dread, the player stammered, demanding to know what kind of nightmare this was. Thrusting his index finger forward like a weapon, our main character knew he had to cancel this apocalyptic summon right now. Error. A red system warning flashed. This authority absolutely cannot be used against the god of destruction. Elon's jaw dropped as absolute despair washed over him. Crack. The man doubled over in sudden agony, coughing up a terrifying amount of blood. Whipping his head around the apostle, frantically screamed that this betrayal was never part of the deal. The villain crumpled lifelessly to the dirt. Suffocating waves of pure abyssal energy flooded the entire battlefield, creeping directly toward our boy. Squeezing his eyes shut, he accepted his fate. This was undoubtedly game over. Suddenly, a massive silhouette glitched into the darkened sky above. After all, his desperate struggles for a happy ending, was this really how he dies? The scene shifted to a misty mountain valley hidden high above the clouds. Gripping a single blade with everything he had left, our young hero launched himself forward into the unknown. His ultimate dream was to ascend as a merciful, overpowered deity. But right now, that ambition was completely shattered into pieces, because the legendary mountain-swallowing deity was actually the dreaded god of destruction himself. And with a sickening rumble, the true monster finally began to rise from the shattered earth. The colossal demon unhinged its nightmare-fueled jaws. Crimson stained every inch of the battlefield. The word abyss pulsed ominously beneath their feet. A battered girl lay motionless in the wreckage. At that exact moment, the god of destruction lost his one true love. His entire reality completely shattered, taking his sanity down with it. An agonizing roar ripped from his throat as bloody tears streamed down his face. A divine halo ignited right above the writer's head. His closed eyelids suddenly snapped open. The once peaceful god of destruction threw away all desires for harmony, fully transforming into the literal avatar of vengeance. A massive blade covered in ancient runes stood pierced into the earth. Glaring intensely, the player made his ultimate choice to help the deity deliver absolute karma upon these scumbags. The great sword instantly erupted into blinding crimson flames. Our main character tilted his head up with zero hesitation. A titanic yellow eyeball ripped through the sky, surrounded by a writhing mass of purple tentacles. The sword demon desperately wanted to back up his god of swords, but his body completely froze up. He could not even twitch a single muscle, because of the overwhelming soul-crushing terror. Glancing over his shoulder, Elon called out his name. Clenching his jaw tightly, our boy stepped up to demonstrate how a real boss fights, especially when dealing with the absolute trash who sponsored these psychos. Catching a sudden voice from behind, the young hero spun right around. John, now completely wrapped in slithering snakes, screamed that everything was a massive scam, and this was never part of their deal. Gasping for air, the traitor shamelessly begged for his life, sobbing that his holy lord would never execute such a loyal servant. But our guy just hit him with a cold, disgusted glare, fully realizing that his pathetic enemy had finally pieced the truth together. In a matter of seconds, the apostle's physical body turned into a completely dehydrated husk. His entire life force was violently drained by the very deity he worshipped, who turned out to be nothing but a savage, blood-crazed demon. The colossal eye glared down from the heavens. Looking absolutely annoyed, the writer told that ugly thing to stop staring at him. Staring up at the blazing, demonic eyeball, the sword demon internally panicked, realizing that single gaze was exactly what sucked John entirely dry. But seeing his fearless comrade simply raise a hand, all of his previous terror instantly vanished. A blindingly radiant blade materialized right into the player's grip. The dark-haired protagonist's eyes literally sparkled with pure excitement. Meanwhile, the apostle watched his surroundings in absolute despair. The demonic eye's massive pupil suddenly shrank in sheer panic. Gripping his weapon tightly, our main character unleashed his Ultra Blade skill. This overpowered ability was granted by 1,000 mystical blades, capable of slicing through the fabric of space itself. His weapon instantly multiplied to 10 times its original size. This glowing greatsword was the literal definition of pure carnage, boosting the user's close combat stats straight through the roof. Rug looked absolutely terrified by the sheer pressure. His master's menacing face manifested right in front of the massive blade. Thirsty for payback, the cosmic eye unleashed its grotesque tentacles with a deafening roar. Launching himself into the air, Elon viciously swung his giant sword. His face twisted into pure, unadulterated rage as he commanded the monster to shut its ugly mouth. The massive appendages lashed out toward him. The boy's eyes dilated with sheer killing intent, mentally condemning his opponent straight back to the deepest pits of hell. The giant eye was left completely wide open, its pupil trembling in pure vulnerability. Meanwhile, the entire 12th district had been reduced to absolute rubble. Heavily armed squads scattered to thoroughly sweep the disaster zone. Rubbing his chin deep in thought, the commanding officer heavily suspected this was a catastrophic triple S rank dimensional rift. His squadmate chimed in, stating that if that was actually true, they were dealing with an apocalyptic threat, capable of wiping an entire nation off the map. Casually strolling up with his hands tucked away, the elite hunter asked for a quick situation report. Frowning with a deeply unsettled expression, the official made the heavy call that their secret project had to launch immediately, no matter the human cost. Suddenly, raising his hand up high, a scout shouted that they had miraculously pulled a survivor from the decimated ruins. The association executive was completely stunned that anyone could cheat death in this absolute meat grinder. Walking right up to the traumatized victim, the official demanded a full report of the incident, but was only met with unhinged, maniacal giggling. The hunter literally dropped his jaw in pure shock, realizing this guy had completely lost his damn mind. Sitting right there in the dust was a totally mummified John. The commander immediately barked orders at his squad to drag the guy straight to the medical tent for emergency first aid. The apostles' eyes nearly popped out of their skulls as they relived the sheer trauma of that giant eye unleashing its tentacles. In that split-second flashback, massive spectral serpents had wrapped around his body right before a deafening shockwave shattered the room. Our absolute unit of a protagonist casually rested his oversized sword against his shoulder, while the villain cackled like a maniac. Elon's eyes flared with an intense otherworldly aura. At this point, he could legitimately be worshipped as a god amongst gods. Cutting to a completely different scene, the massive carcass of a slaughtered dragon lay dumped in the middle of a forest clearing. Standing before a massive cheering crowd, Anna scowled with pure annoyance. The locals were throwing a massive party praising her name for single-handedly saving them all. Crossing his arms defensively, the guy next to her questioned if she genuinely held an S-rank license, pointing out that the dragon species naturally possessed an insanely high resistance against any type of psychological magic. Glancing over her shoulder, the fiercely independent girl snapped back, asking why he was suddenly all up in her business, and aggressively demanded he hand over the mana crystal. Playing dumb, the boy casually asked where it went, while lazily tossing the exact same rock her way. The young guy told her to seriously chill out with the massive attitude. He was internally crying over casually handing away an artifact easily worth 100 million, and demanded to know her master plan after snatching the epic loot. The lethal woman coldly threatened him to just follow orders if he valued his heartbeat. Grinding her teeth in total frustration, the elite huntress complained that the supposedly legendary dragon fought more like an overweight iguana, heavily regretting the absolute waste of her time. Taking that oversized lizard down, with a sharp pop, she literally vanished into thin air. The swordsman just sighed, calling her an eternally grumpy perfectionist, and declared they should totally hit the town to celebrate crushing this S-rank dungeon, especially since they miraculously pulled it off with 0 casualties. Exactly 2 days later, vibrant blue clouds drifted lazily over the city skyline. Our guy casually tossed a damp towel over his shoulder. Perched securely on her uncle's back, the little girl playfully called him an old man. A warm, fuzzy feeling washed over our overpowered prodigy as he glanced over his shoulder. Elon immediately fired back. Old. He didn't even have a wife yet. But honestly, the brutal recoil from wielding that colossal greatsword left every single muscle in his body screaming in agony. Suddenly, the girl's eyebrows shot up. She eagerly tapped her uncle, pointing her tiny finger straight ahead. "Who is that guy?" she whispered. Right in front of them, bowing so low his forehead practically kissed the dirt, was the legendary sword demon. Swirling dark aura endlessly radiated from his kneeling figure. The terrifying warrior humbly begged for his master's next command. Elon just deadpanned. "Did you finally manage to fix the bathroom door?" Snapping his head up, the devoted follower fiercely rubbed his nose and confirmed the repair. He passionately declared he could never forgive himself for inconveniencing the absolute sword god. Elon's jaw literally dropped. This edgy guy was straight up acting like a hardcore cult fanatic. A heavy sigh escaped his lips. He was definitely stuck dealing with this absolute weirdo. Pivoting on his heel, our main character casually checked if his comrade had finished the chores. If the grunt work was done, the guy could finally take a well-deserved breather. The sword demon's face twisted into a fierce scowl. He proudly announced that cleaning up the pathetic remains of that so-called magnificent guild was totally beneath them. Averting his gaze, the Dark Warrior explained the true situation. That famous S-rank Huntress and the Hunter Association's elite squad had already launched a massive full-scale sweep. Thanks to their ruthless raid, every single underground syndicate in Korea had been completely dismantled. Resting a hand on his knee, our player tilted his head. Wait, were they talking about Mina? You know, the superstar hunter constantly trending on every TV channel. His loyal follower nodded immediately, totally acknowledging her status as a legendary top-tier beauty. Squeezing his eyes shut, the protagonist pieced the puzzle together. The famous Huntress and Mary shared the exact same last name, yet their vibes couldn't be more ridiculously different. Shaking off his exhaustion, Elon gently suggested his niece go hang out with her mom for a bit. Striding purposefully toward the exit, our boy's mind started racing. He absolutely needed to hit up the healing center as soon as possible. It was the perfect spot to test drive his freshly awakened recovery skill. Ding! A glowing blue interface materialized. The system officially praised the user for blocking the God of Destruction's avatar, instantly rewarding him with a sweet 1 million coins. A cocky smirk painted his face. His rapid growth was genuinely insane, but reading the fine print made his blood run cold. That terrifying eyeball he fought, it was merely 1% of the actual monster's true power. Visualizing that massive cosmic horror, our player's expression darkened. If that was just a tiny fragment, what kind of apocalyptic nightmare was the true Abyss Dragon? Another golden hologram suddenly popped up. The system practically taunted him, asking if the user was ready to trigger his epic promotion quest. Our main character raised a single confused eyebrow. Promotion quest. What on earth was this overpowered system planning now? The glowing text casually dropped a massive bombshell. He simply needed to gather 1 billion devoted worshippers. Oh, and casually wipe out 1 billion intelligent life forms. Elon's forehead creased with pure stress. Was he seriously expected to grind through both of these impossible objectives? Somewhere from the building's top floor, an irritated groan echoed loudly. How am I supposed to pull off both at the exact same time, he muttered, totally baffled. His eyes widened to the size of saucers as the reality sank in. Did he legitimately have to brainwash 1 billion humans into a cult, or worse, become the greatest villain in history and massacre them all? He frantically weighed the alternative conditions, recruiting or executing God-tier rank 10 awakened hunters. Whether he chose the path of a benevolent deity or an evil sovereign, this entire setup was basically a suicide mission. Sweating blood for a minor class advancement was officially crossing the line. The shimmering interface flashed the brutal requirements. Route 1, low rank God of Light. Amass an army of 1 billion followers. Or mentally break high-level beings S rank or above, forcing them to blindly pledge their absolute loyalty. Route 2, low rank God of Darkness. Farm pure atrocity points by ruthlessly slaughtering at least 1 million sentient souls, or hunt down legendary rank 10 beings, brutally ripping away and absorbing their divine energy. The system coldly demanded his ultimate choice. Massaging his throbbing temples, Elon's genius gamer brain started sparking. Wait, there was totally a loophole here. A sly, wicked smirk crept across his face as mental character icons floated in his vision. What if he just pitted all these insanely strong stalkers against each other? A little gaslighting, some strategic puppet master moves, and he could easily cheese these impossible quests. Chuckling darkly at his smartphone screen, he practically felt like an evil mastermind. Dance for me, puppets, he muttered, mentally ordering his fierce rivals to tear each other to shreds. The little girl stared up at her uncle, genuinely terrified by his villainous laughing fit. Fast forward to room 505. Elon stood confidently outside the hospital ward. The clinical hallways were completely packed with bustling crowds. Our hero raised a skeptical eyebrow. Was the supposedly critically injured Mary actually resting in there? Intense, rhythmic panting echoed through the heavy wooden door. A familiar voice energetically called him inside. Twisting the handle, our boy stepped into the room, thinking that sounded way too hype for a dying patient. Sure enough, Mary was aggressively blasting through one-armed push-ups, her entire body wrapped like a mummy in medical gauze. Spotting her absolute idol, her face instantly lit up with pure joy. Leaping to her feet like a hyperactive puppy, she bounded straight toward him. She gushed about how incredibly happy she was that her legendary master actually came to check on her. Elon just stared, completely dumbfounded. Why on earth wasn't she resting in bed? She was supposed to be critically wounded. Mary flashed a massive, goofy grin and scratched the back of her head. She literally couldn't stay laying down anymore, claiming she'd practically mold into the hospital mattress from sheer boredom. Analyzing her bizarre energy, he carefully asked how her battered body was holding up. Swiftly spinning around to show off her back, she beamed like a ray of sunshine, insisting she was already back at 100%. She eagerly offered to prove her miraculous recovery right then and there. Before he could even ask what she meant, Mary started aggressively tearing off her medical bandages. She proudly declared that her skin was completely flawless, without a single scar left. It was straight up a superhuman miracle. Blushing furiously, our protagonist instantly snapped his head away in pure awkwardness. But suddenly, a terrifying aura flared up. Another girl materialized right behind our panicking hero and hissed in a bone-chilling tone, asking just what exactly he thought he was doing. She swung her arm aggressively, her eyebrows fiercely knitted together in absolute murderous disgust. A loud smack echoed as she slapped Mary right on the back. The poor girl let out an agonizing shriek. Ilan just stood there, raising an eyebrow in pure shock. Seriously, where did this absolute menace even spawn from? Mina folded her arms like a total boss, completely unfazed by the chaos. Was she seriously about to peel off her bandages in front of some random dude? A blazing red handprint was literally searing into Mary's skin. Mina whipped around her piercing gaze, locking onto him. What exactly was he doing lurking around here? Ilan just pointed a thumb at his own chest. He casually fired back that he could ask her the exact same thing. Big mistake. In a flash, Mina lunged forward, violently snatching him by the collar. What was his deal with her little sister, and what kind of twisted mind games had he pulled to make her act like this? Ilan blinked, totally caught off guard. Wait, so this absolute powerhouse was actually Mary's flesh and blood. He had to admit her terrifying aura was completely off the charts. Mina glared daggers at him. She warned him to back the heck off her sister, or he would be catching these hands permanently. Suddenly, Mary cried out in sheer panic, begging her to stop. Mary clenched her trembling fists, desperately pleading with her not to lay a single finger on her master. Mina whipped back around, grinding her teeth in raw rage. Wait, did she just call this absolute loser her master?